order the annual organization meeting for the Temple City Unified School District Board of Education on Wednesday, December 11, 2019. I see all board members are present and accounted for. I'm sure our student member Samuel I will be here shortly. And with regard to request for public comment on agendized and non-agendized items, I have one here. Is this for the regular meeting or for the organizational meeting? From Lisa Hoyt? Now or later?
Are you going to be talking about compensation during the...
We will. We will. Okay,
Yeah.
Before I begin, I'd like to say thank you, board members, for all your service to our community and for giving me this opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Lisa Hoybe, and I've been teaching first grade at LaRose Elementary School for 23 years. I've also spent many times off and on the CTA negotiating team. I'm here today to voice my disappointment regarding our district's one-time off-salary bonus offer. Over the years, I've sat in district negotiation teams and accepted the district's proposals as fair. However, this year, I decided it was time I step up and come before you so that you can put a face to this issue. In my classroom, I teach first graders to be considerate and fair, and I expect the same from our district. Unfortunately, I do not feel that our district's offer met either of these standards. I grew up in the area and graduated from Arcadia High School. If I took a job in that district, I'd be making $15,423,000 more in total compensation per year. Now, being on the negotiation committee, I realize that Arcadia is not one of our mutually agreed upon comparison districts. So instead, I will compare myself with the district that board member Michael Lynn works for, San Marino. If I were working in San Marino, I would be making an additional $12,243 in compensation a year. Similar results can be found when comparing my salary to Glendora, South Pasadena, Claremont, and La Cañada. In fact, I make $14,747 less than I'm going to say that again. In fact, I make $14,747 less than I would if I were working in La Cañada. Temple City Unified School District is well beyond financially stable, with more than $7.5 million in unallocated reserves. Over the years, they have stockpiled a reserve that far surpasses the mandated 3% plus the 2%. The cost of 1% raise for all TCEA members is less than $303,000, which only touches that reserve. During last year's negotiations, we were told the district could not afford a penny more than the raise we were given, yet the reserve continued to grow. I have gone through the budget and I don't see anywhere where they put money aside for salary raises. My understanding is that should come from COLA. Retired teachers receive an increase in their pension. Why shouldn't we receive salary as well? With COLA being 3.26%, I don't understand how the district cannot afford to give us teachers a raise. Everything is more expensive now. Bread, gasoline, and especially insurance premiums. Insurance premiums cost me more. In fact, our insurance premiums increased, but we remain with the lowest allocation of health benefits among our comparative districts. Due to an autoimmune disease, having a PPO insurance is not an option for me. The $9,000 I'm provided with does not even cover the cost of my insurance alone, let alone my family's. In Temple City, I argue that we work just as hard as our surrounding districts. In fact, I feel like we work harder, with less resources. Our reserve is extraordinarily high, and yet we are still compensated unfairly. The district negotiation team said they were coming down with the parameters given to them by you, the board. I am asking you, the board, today to consider changing those parameters and providing the teachers, the ones who have stood by through multiple district administration change, the ones that have worked here for 20 plus years, that they receive a raise that they deserve, that we deserve. Thank you for your time.
Right.
Thank you, Lisa. We're going to now move on with the main portion of our agenda tonight, and I'd like to, before I initiate that, explain what's going to happen. So we're going to elect officers for the board for the next year. We don't have in our bylaws an approved procedure, a specific method to do that. So I consulted Robert Rules of Orders and some other things. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is entertain a motion for president, and then we'll take action. And once that vote has occurred and we've elected a new president, that new president will run the rest of the meeting from that point on. But we're not going to get up and play musical chairs. Okay? So with that, I'd like to entertain motions for president.
I would like to make the motion to have Donna Georgino serve as the president of the school board.
A second.
Okay, so we have a motion from Member Lennon, a second from Member Espinoza. Any other nominations? Kim?
Nominate Michael.
Can you decline the nomination if possible?
Okay, you certainly can.
Okay, I nominate Mr. Smith.
I'll decline the offer too, thank you. So with that, any other nominations? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call for the vote. All in favor for Donna Georgino to become our next board president, please say aye. Aye. And opposed? Okay, so we have a 4-1 vote, and Donna, congratulations.
Thank you.
And you're in charge.
Okay. I'll open it up for nominations for Vice President of the Board of Education. Yes, Ken.
I nominate Michael Lynn.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Are there any other nominations? Okay, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, congratulations. Next, I'll accept nominations for Clerk of the Board of Education.
I'll go ahead and nominate Melissa Espinoza.
I second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Are there any other nominations? Okay, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, congratulations. Next, on the agenda is Kimberly Fricker is elected to serve as Secretary of the Board of Education. I'll need a motion and a second for that.
So moved.
Matt, second. Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay. Congratulations, Madam Secretary. Next, Joshua Porter is nominated to serve as Assistant Secretary to the Board of Education. I need a motion and a second, please. Yes.
Second.
Okay, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations. Before we move on, I just wanted to take 1 minute to thank Matt Smith for serving as board president this past year. Matt, your commitment to the children of this district and your integrity and excellent leadership skills allowed this board to navigate through many important issues and complex issues that affected our students. So thank you very much for your service, and I'm going to look forward to you guiding me and making sure I don't goof up. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is to designate the second and fourth Wednesdays of each month at 6:00 p.m. for our regular board meetings. Closed session will begin at 6:02, open session at 7:00 p.m. Meetings will be held normally in the boardroom right here at 9700 Las Tunas Drive, Temple City. In the months where there is only one board meeting, January, April, July, August, November, and December, it will be the fourth
Two Wednesdays.
fourth Wednesday of the month, except for November, because that's, no, except for November and December. Sorry. Okay, I just wanted to make a note that we, later on in the meeting, we're going to be amending the bylaws to be consistent with this. So can I get a motion and a second, please?
Move to approve?
And Ken? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That passes. Next is appointment of representatives by the board president. And I'd like to appoint member Nolenberg to serve as the board representative to the county committee on school district organization. Is that okay with you?
I don't even know what it is.
From what I understand, it doesn't require anything at this point, so it's an easy job. Okay. Can I get a motion and a second, please?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Congratulations. I'd like to appoint member Smith as the board representative to the Los Angeles County School Trustees Association. Okay with you?
Fine.
Okay. May I get a motion and a second, please?
I'll make it.
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Next, I'd like to appoint member Nolenberg to serve as the board representative to the Temple City Committee on Aging through December 31st, 2020. Is that okay with you? member? Okay. Motion and a second, please.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Kimberly Fricker and Monica Makovitz are appointed to serve as board representatives in employer-employee relations with authority to delegate representation to a management team member. Get a motion and a second, please.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next, I would like to appoint Melissa Espinoza to serve as the board representative to the Temple City Schools Foundation. Is that agreeable to you?
Yes.
A motion and a second, please.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and the last appointment is I'd like to appoint myself and member Smith to serve as board representatives to the School District City Standing Committee. A motion and a second, please.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Passes. Next, authorization of signatures. Adopt resolution 1920-11, the annual certification of signatures, verifies signatures of governing board members and authorizes Monica Makovitz, Joshua Porter, Kimberly Fricker, and Marianne Sorrell to sign warrants, contracts, orders for payment, notice of employment, and related documents as approved by the Board of Education by roll call vote. So,
Move to.
we need a roll call vote for this, so, yeah.
I think Ken did.
Okay, Ken, you make the motion?
I'll second.
Okay, we're gonna do a roll call vote. Is that it, right? Okay. Member Smith,
Yes.
member Nolenberg,
Yes.
member Lynn,
Yes.
member Espinoza,
Yes.
and I'm a yes also. Number 17, authorize Diana Vasquez, Director of Purchasing, to sign purchase orders under $1,000. Motion and a second, please.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Designate management confidential or other unrepresented positions, and there's a whole list of them on the agenda if anybody'd like to see those. Can I get a motion and a second, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by member Smith and a second by member Lynn. All in favor?
Aye.
Next, number 19, appoint Marianne Sorrell as district representative and Maria Cabrera as alternate to the West San Gabriel Valley Benefits Joint Powers Authority, West San Gabriel Valley Workers' Compensation Joint Powers Authority, and West San Gabriel Valley Liability and Property Joint Powers Authority. I'm sorry, member Nolenberg.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Adopt board policies through December 2020.
Move to approve.
Okay, member Smith, second. Member Nolenberg, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And I will accept a motion to adjourn our annual organization meeting at 6:14 p.m.
The motion we're waiting for.
Member Nollenberg, Member Lynn. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on to the
When they get us, then we're.
11 was, a motion was made by Ken, second by Melissa.
We're gonna get up right now.
Now we're going to move on to the regular agenda.
What? What? Never mind. We'll talk about it after.
All right, so I'd like to
Don't give
call
them that
to
power.
order the regular meeting of the Temple City Unified School District for Wednesday, December 11th, 2019. And we'll do a roll call. Member Smith? Member Lynn? Member Nollenberg? Member Espinosa?
Here.
Student Board Member Al?
Here.
And I'm here too, okay. Next is public comment on closed session agenda items. Do you have any more requests for public comment?
Right over here, I'd like to speak now if I can.
Okay,
President Georgina. Thank you.
Sure.
Hi, thank you for allowing me to speak before you go into your closed session. Just a couple of things. I've noticed that we're spending some money on establishing a new full-day kindergarten program. We're asking for a grant, and with that grant, we probably match another $800,000. And the whole goal of this is to receive income for our school district by having a full-day program. And what I'd like to do is not only look at that, but at other ways of receiving income or stopping students from leaving our wonderful district. I've had a couple meetings, and they've been really great meetings, and we sort of have a solution, and I kind of want a solution to move forward with opportunities for youth and options for learning, or options for youth and opportunities for learning. It's the same thing, OFY, OFL. These are charter school type programs that our students go to in the summer. And they take a lot of health classes and a lot of history classes, and they're taking our ADA. And so Dr. Fricker has worked with a situation like this before in Palos Verdes, and she has a wonderful solution. And we would love for that solution to move forward, and maybe we can ask to speak about that more frequently. And because the fact is that if we change our board policy to stop these students from leaving for this program in the summer and losing our ADA, it's going to take between 4 and 6 months, as Dr. Fricker said, to get this ball rolling. And summer is coming. And so as we look for other avenues to bring in revenue to this district, I'd really like to look at this one to stop this outflow. And changing topics to the budget, to your employees, all of us, not just TCA, but all of us. If you agree with anything I say, feel free to hold up your COLA. It's often said that the best way to know what an organization truly values is to look at its budget. So no matter what leaders say they value, the truth is where the resources are directed. So when I look at the Temple City budget, it's clear to me that Temple City values saving money. In 15-16, there was a surplus of $4,684,000. In 16-17, there was a surplus of $4,451,000. In 17-18, there was a surplus of $3,300,000. In 18-19, there was a surplus of $3,563,000. Where do these surpluses come from? They come from underestimating our revenue, because we never really truly do know what we're going to get, although Marianne Sorrell does a wonderful job predicting it. It is underestimated to a bit. But we also do a wonderful job overestimating our expenses. What happens is, the money isn't being spent when we overestimate our expenses. It's being saved. And as much as our association has begged for, and as Dr. Mack knows, I have asked, and she has heard, that I would like a plan, and I would like a concrete plan. A plan that has expenses attached to it that's detailed, not just an idea of a plan. So all of this money is being swept into reserve, creating an $18,400,000 reserve in 1819. $6,657,687 are unallocated. That means we don't know what we want to even spend it on. It's just sitting there. Or maybe there's a plan, but there's no money attached to the plan. So unfortunately, last month, when our association received a 1.5% bonus offer in negotiations, I realized that it's true, that the best way to know what an organization values is to look at the budget. We weren't offered any money on our salary schedule. So you're valuing your reserve. Temple City values money over compensating the workforce and saving that money. It's ridiculous, not to mention offensive and insulting, to assess our work at 1.5% bonus. I would expect this type of bonus if there was a time of financial crisis. This is not a time of financial crisis. You, Dr. Fricker, are sitting on a pot of gold. We all realize that your job or your role is to keep this district financially sound, and you have done it well, and we respect that. But you also need to honor and value your employees with fair compensation. So the next 3 years forecasted, when I look at my budget, have no money being spent from the reserve. This district is sound. What I expect is the same event to keep occurring. A trend, as Dr. Lynn taught me years ago, was when you see something that happens 3 years in a row. We have a trend. We have far more than 3 years worth of data that shows this district is moving money into the reserve instead of budgeting appropriately for their employees who are working on the front lines with their students. So there is a concern by some board members that our projected budget shows that we will be deficit spending in year 21-22. LACO has sent us letters that say we are financially sound, we are stable, but they also say we will be deficit spending in 21-22. And what I say is, please go back to this trend. Do you really think we're going to be deficit spending if, when I mention all this surplus money that we have, will we really be deficit spending? I don't think so. So the cost for a 1% salary increase for Temple City Education Association on schedule is $302,000. And I want to say that I firmly believe that you all are devaluating the contribution of these professionals who work directly with your students. Your teachers are paid below comparable districts in salary. As our teachers work more years and gain more professional experience and education levels, our salaries begin to slip and fall drastically behind what our comparable districts are. Not only are our salaries lower, but our health benefits do not stack up to any of the comparable districts. Data that we have collected from our that show our salaries compared to other districts along with our benefits. It also states at the top of our contract that it is part of our negotiations that you will maintain within the median level of our comparable districts. So we began to make some gains last year to move out of the bottom quartile. And we received a very generous 4.5% on-salary increase. As did a lot of people in this room that I'm looking at. We do not want to be the highest paid comparable district. That is not our goal. But we do slowly want to climb and crawl our way out of the bottom. And we cannot do that with a bonus. We would like to make significant progress tomorrow in our negotiations. I hope the board directs the bargaining team, or maybe the bargaining team could direct the board, I'm not sure which way it's working, for you to work together with us. We are very willing to work with you. We work hard for our students, and we hope the school board will step up and work with us to achieve salary parity with our surrounding districts. Thank you.
Is there any other public comment? If not, we'll move into closed session, and there are 2 items on the agenda tonight. Personnel matters under Government Code 54957, Public Employee Appointment, Discipline, Dismissal, Release, and labor negotiations, Government Code 54957.6. An update, a direction to district negotiators Kimberly Fricker, Monica Makovitz, and Joshua Porter, and Marianne Sorrell for TCEA, SCEA 105, CSEA, CSEA 823, and management. So can I get a motion to adjourn to closed session? Okay, motion by member Smith, second by member Nolenberg. And it is 6:26. All in favor? Aye. Passes 5-0. Being our meeting to open session at 7:26, and can I get a motion, please, in a second? Okay, a motion by member Smith, second by member Nolenberg. All in favor? Passes 5-0. Announcement, tonight's meeting is being digitally recorded. Item 8 is the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'd like to ask our student board member, Samuel, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Everyone please stand.
Thank you, Samuel. Number 9 is announcement of actions taken in closed session, and there were none. Item 10 is special recognition presentations, and we don't have any tonight. And item 11 is public comment on agendized and non-agendized items. And I know we have a couple people. Have you filled out the forms yet? Or, okay, do you want to go ahead and speak, and then you can give.
My name is Julio Sanchez. I'm an Upper Division Coordinator for IYSO, Temple City Region 98. I'm coming to you guys because we represent a non-profit organization. We charge the kids $100, and by the time we pay for the uniform and we pay for the equipment, there's very little money left. So when the fees are so high, it pretty much is going to kill the program. We just can't afford it. I don't know what happened 3 or 4 years ago. All used to be $200-300. It's very affordable. I don't want a gimme. I don't want you to give us for free. We're willing to pay for it, but the prices have to be affordable. And we don't need the school grounds. We just need the grass. And we need to get a photo party. We get a photo party. I know it's been an issue in the spring. AYSO only uses oak because Lago Park is for baseball and softball. So we cannot have games for parks and recreations. So the only option we have is for us to rely on the school district, and it's very limited, the money that we have for the school district. We do it for free in nonprofit organization. None of our referees or coaches get paid. So when they're asking for thousands of dollars, I mean, we can't afford it. I mean, all the cities around us, the school districts work with parks and recreation. I mean, I don't want to step in anybody's toes, but this is between parks and recreation and Temple City. I mean, we gotta figure out how the schools can work with parks and recreation programs. I mean, we can't afford it. We really gonna kill the program. And it's a case that go to Temple City schools. I coach U19. I coach the older kids. My kids are the varsity school kids in Temple City High School. And to me, it's I can't afford it. I mean, the prices is outrageous. Okay? That's all I got.
Okay, thank you. If you could take that. And I just want to note, later on the agenda, there is an item regarding a facility use fee study, so you might be interested in that.
Yeah, I am. I mean, we don't charge that much money on the spring. We got maybe 100 to 150 feet. On the fall, we got about 800 kids. And in the fall, we can deal with parks and recs because we got Limo Park, but on the spring, we don't have any.
Okay, that's item 24. Okay?
All right, thank you.
And I think we had somebody else who wanted.
Do you want me to wait for item 24? Or?
If you'd like to, you're welcome to, or you can do it now. Okay.
I'm Jason Oberlander with Temple City ASA, representing the softball program in the city. I kind of have the same thing going on. The prices for us to use the high school softball field or any of the school fields, we just can't afford it. It's overpriced. And I went to, just for information for the school board and for Parks and Rec, I went to Arcadia, and they're willing to give me fields for free, and I'm a Temple City organization, and I cannot get any help from the school district. I can't get any help from Parks and Rec with the school district. I don't know what the headlock there is between, like Julio said, there's a few years ago, it was working out great. There wasn't these outrageous charges, and then a few years back, it went to $50 an hour. To hear they're gonna raise it, that they wanna put somebody there to unlock the lock for us and open the bathrooms, but we could easily rent a porta potty and have a porta potty put there for a third or 3% of the price that you guys are asking, basically. Like I said, I can go to Arcadia, and they're gonna give me fields for free on their school grounds. And at this point, I don't know what to do. I don't want our group of girls that represent Temple City and go to state and win districts for the city, and then go to nationals to stop representing Temple City. I'm a resident of Temple City. But if I have to, as a board member, do what's right for these group of girls, so this league can continue, then we may have to go to Arcadia. So, something to think about. You guys are pushing out the nonprofit youth programs of your city. And it's affecting drastically the boards, how we have to operate. We can't fundraise that money. There's not enough fundraising that one little group can do. We have 127 kids, 137 kids. How do I raise $3,000 to get open? That's a huge feat. We already have one fundraiser. That's to help cover the uniforms, the umpire fees. I mean, I guess I could ask help me Honda, but I doubt they're going to help me. I'm asking the school board. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wanted to speak? Okay. Yeah, if you could please fill out a form when you finish. Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
family. Thank you so much for being here tonight and allowing us time to speak. I'm a special education teacher here at Temple City, and I love it. It's been extremely challenging for the district to attract and retain quality special education teachers. You're shaking your heads. I know you know. We know too. I know this because not only have I worked with and trained 7 special education teachers all in my short time at Temple City at my site. 5 of those were long-term substitutes for the same position within the same classroom. Are special education teachers not valued? While other districts offer special education teachers stipends for the extra meetings, special ed assessments, report writing, while also teaching multiple grade levels, preparation for those multiple grade levels in multiple subjects, and constant scheduling, TCUSD does not. The total compensation of TCUSD teachers does not compare favorably to that of our comparable districts. Not only are our salaries lower, about 20%, but also are our benefits. Are we not valued? Special education teachers are charged with staying current on laws that impact IEPs and general education students as well. Attending trainings, conferences, reading newsletters on our own time helps us stay current. Constant research is vital in order to stay current on these new laws that are ever changing. One small clerical error or ignorance regarding a new law can result in an expensive lawsuit, not in the district's favor. And I see some of you shaking your heads because it's public record. We know it's not in our favor. Hiring the best teachers will save the district money in the long run. IEPs will be done accurately, laws will be followed, lawsuits will be fewer when you attract the best quality teacher. How can you attract the best quality teacher? You increase the health benefits and salary schedule. Not only have we not received a COLA increase in years, but we are now in surplus and we have the funds to sustainably grant at least a 3% on salary raise to its teachers. And yet, we are hearing that there are insufficient funds. While saying that, the district has been able to grant their own raises, including to new district staff who have worked here for less than a year. Some of these employees are making well over $200,000, which is also public record. These employees received a raise. Are us teachers not valued? Are we not worth a COLA increase when there are surplus and sustainable funds? Please ask HR how hard it has been to staff the special ed department. And I say that with love. Just this week, we had yet another round of interviews for that same position with the revolving door. This is the same position.
Excuse me, you passed your 3 minutes, so could you kind of wrap it up?
Basically, why are we having long-term subs in the same position at the same school site for over 2 years? Besides that, are we not worth our COLA when there are sustainable funds? Thank you, that's all. Yes, that's me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I would love to finish my
I'm sorry, I thought you said Dawn Newfield. No.
Okay, I have one
Okay,
more.
Dawn, I'm sorry, okay. Got my numbers wrong.
Good evening. My name is Dawn Neufeld and I teach English at Tcusd. Normally, I spend my whole day talking about letters and words and sentence structure and rhetorical devices that writers make to create meaning. But today, I'm going to share with you some numbers. 5% is the amount my landlords raise my rent every August. 3.26% is the cost of living adjustment from 2019. 0% is what I received of that increase. 166 is the number of students I see every day, 5 days a week. 14 is the number of hours it takes me to grade one set of my students' essay if I only dedicate a maximum of 5 minutes per essay. And let's be honest, some of those essays take longer than 5 minutes to grade. I hate saying that. He was like 3 months. 1,980 is the number of essays I've graded so far this school year. 3,400 is the number of essays I already have scheduled for the remainder of this school year. 449, that's the number of hours of my own time I have spent or will spend grading outside of my regular contract hours. 449 hours is equal to 18.7 days, which is equal to almost 1 extra work month for me. 2 is the number of clubs I advise on campus. 2 is the number of days a week I supervise these clubs' activities in my room during my lunch. 5 is the number of days I'll spend away from my home and my daughter this year to chaperone those clubs, for which I do not receive extra pay. 5% of a school district's annual budget is required to be held in reserve to tide them over in cases of emergency. 30% is approximately how much the Temple City Unified School District has in reserve as of today.
Woo!
Based on these numbers, Temple City Unified School District has more than ample funds to help compensate teachers and faculty for the work they really do. Based on these numbers, Tcusd has more than enough funds to give towards those who work day in and day out with our students, ensuring their education and safety. Based on these numbers, there's no apparent reason that teachers and faculty should not be given a substantial increase in salary. Thank you for your time. I've been a teacher for 27 years and 25 of them dedicated to this district. Quite frankly, and straight to the point, the cost of teaching at Tcusd versus comparable districts is becoming way too high. I don't understand what's happening in this district anymore and what is valued. We, the teachers and support staff of Temple City Unified, do not in any way feel valued given the insulting offer that was made by the district in negotiations. It is degrading. It is a slap in the face. It doesn't even cover the cost of living increase that everyone is entitled to. The district receives the money for that specific purpose, yet they refuse to pass that on to the people who make this district what it is. This is incomprehensible. It's right there in the name, cost of living increase. We all experience the increase and we all should have compensation to attend to it. The state gives the money for exactly that purpose, yet the district is choosing to withhold this money and keep it for themselves. We were offered a one-time 1.25 bonus not on the salary schedule, not benefiting retirement, not benefiting our exorbitant healthcare costs, and most certainly not covering the cost of living increase. So what are we to take away from this? What message are you trying to send? What you are saying is that we're not valued. We do not value the work, you do not value the work we do, or the time we give to our students, a job that frequently takes away from the time we give our own families. I'm not understanding the reasoning. There is no acceptable answer as to why you do not negotiate in good faith. Contrary to what you've been told, we're not bleeding money. We have a huge reserve, over 5 times the state mandated requirement. Last year in negotiations, the district said that it would be extremely challenging to give a 4.5 raise, but they gave it, and lo and behold, we ended the year with a $4,408,000 that was not spent. So apparently, the 4.5 raise wasn't a problem at all. So how is this year any different from last year, when this year we're getting even more money from the state? There's a 3.2% COLA. But you're choosing to keep the money for yourselves and not make it equitable for your employees. This is so incredibly disappointing. You refuse to give back to the people who use their own money to supply their classrooms, use their personal time to grade papers, make lesson plans, to attend sporting events, performing art events, to support students. You can continue to ask more and more from us, not to just teach in our subject matter, but to be mentors, support systems, be aware of students' mental duress and stress, protect them in the event of disasters and school shootings that are all too commonplace on campuses today.
Yet, could you wrap it up, please?
Yes, we get none of this in return from the district. I'm not quite sure how you justify this to yourselves. Are you aware of the message you're sending? We are not deficit spending. This is double talk and untrue. You can manipulate numbers, but this is wrong and unconscionable. We are sitting on a reserve that is 5 times the mandated requirement. The district saved money last year in spite of the raise that they said would be too challenging to give. And yet the individuals who work closest to students get insulted time and time again with the district saying they cannot afford a raise. Again, you said this last year and that proved not to be true. So what makes this different this year?
Did you want to speak? Oh, I'm sorry. Michael Mendoza, did you want to speak now?
I'll wait to hear item 24.
Okay, great. All right, is there anyone else who wanted to speak now? All right, we'll move on to district updates, business services, Mary Ann Sorrell.
Good evening. The bond refinancing closed last week. This will be a refinancing of 2 of the issuances for bond measure S. The financial people estimated that we would get an additional $4 to $6 million based on lower interest rates, and I'm happy to share that instead we received $7,300,000 for additional bond funds based on that refinancing, and that money has arrived at LACO, so it is in our account for the next bond projects.
All right.
We have 2 bond projects that are still underway, one at La Rosa and one at Cloverleaf. At this point in time, we expect to have all students, staff, furniture, and materials back in their classrooms by the return from winter break. The cafeteria will be a little bit slower at La Rosa. The approval sat in DSA for quite some time, so that won't be complete until the middle of January. Thank you.
Okay, next up, educational services, Dr. Porter.
I just want to give you a quick update that we're moving forward with the Final Site website project. Last week, 2 notifications were sent out to our website content teams and principals. The first provided an evaluation tool, screenshots, example of the current web page, and the second notification asked team members to review Final Site theme selection. We received a number of responses about the theme selection, with some inquiry. The majority of the concerns that the feedback we received was just about the structure of the website being too long when you scroll through with the general communication. We were able to communicate back and select the theme that was predominantly the most ADA compliant, would give the ease of that access for staff and for the parents to be able to view. And we can fix most of the concerns that were addressed within that theme set. Our next steps here, we're just working with Final Site to finalize the theme selection. We're working on uploading logos, school colors. Department meetings within each of the directors began last week to start looking at all of our content pages to make sure we have all the relevant necessary information to serve compliance. And then our first step will be begin working with Temple City High School regarding some of their school colors. There's some challenges with the yellow and the ADA compliance there. So, as far as the technology committee, I do need to thank Ellen. She's really good at she's been very positive in helping me try to work on my communication here out to the staff. We did send some information out earlier this week about a technology committee. And so we inquired about some interest. We did not get a whole lot back. And so right now we're working with Dr. Fricker and our executive cabinet to get information back out to PCA to see if they can help us solicit some more volunteers or some more committee members. So, lastly, master schedule debrief, education services. We have met with each of the site administrators at Oak and Temple City High School to review their master schedules so that we can better understand the program offerings. Part of the process, we'll also be reviewing our partnerships and pathways and trying to gain a better understanding of their impact on student schedules and staffing. We will continue to meet the middle and high school this month and January as well.
Thank you. And personnel services, Dr. Makovich.
We've had a busy week. I first have to thank all of you.
Change your microphone.
I first have to thank all the classified employees. On December 5th, we had our classified job study orientation kickoff. We had over 150 employees come to that orientation, along with union leadership, to start taking the first steps and taking a look at each of our job descriptions. We have a survey that I know is not easy to fill out. It is due on December 19th. If anyone needs any help, union leadership and myself are here to help you, so please reach out. The process will be completed about March or April, and then our findings will be presented to the employees to get last final input before it goes to the board. But I do have to thank everyone involved in the process. I know it is not easy, but please, we're here to offer our support. I would like to also congratulate the new leadership for CSEA 823 under the new presidency of Art Tcusd. So just congratulations to his whole team. Looking forward to meeting with you and working on negotiations. LCAP, the LCAP plan will be changing this year, the template. LACO will finalize the template in January. We will have our second LCAP meeting scheduled for January 16th, so I hope to have that new information presented as we move forward with goal setting. So I do want to thank staff and parents who are on that committee with me as we move forward. We are currently still looking at online workflow to move from online, such things as online time cards to manual time cards to online to streamlining resources and time in human resources. We will finish the vendor demonstrations this week and have more information for you at the next board meeting. Next to announce is that we have a busy week with negotiations this week. We meet with TCEA tomorrow, and then we meet with CSEA 105 on Monday. We look forward to working with you and moving forward. And I want to thank all the teams for all the prep. There's a lot of time and energy that goes to preparing the documents, the budgets, and each side for hanging in there and trying to move forward. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll move on to our bargaining units. Temple City Education Association. Ellen, would you
I
like?
think I said it. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you very much.
CSEA 105, Robin, would you like to speak?
I think she said it.
Okay.
Since we haven't gone into negotiations yet, it's not appropriate at this time.
Okay. CSEA 823, Rick Valbuena. Number 14 is our student board member comments.
So good evening, everyone. As a student of the district, I've personally seen the amount of effort that each teacher puts into their curriculums, providing each and every student with the attention and care that they need. So I believe that the effort put out by every teacher on every campus should reflect the amount of compensation they receive. Thank the board for allowing me to attend the California School Board Association Student Board Member Program in San Diego. Through this program, I was able to connect with other student board members from across California. I was also able to see how other districts appoint their student board members, and it was interesting to see like the drastic differences between our district and others. For example, there was this one district that had multiple student board members who each took a turn to sit on the Board of Education, and I was like amazed to see how they're able to represent each high school in their district. Overall, I was able to learn many characteristics needed to be an effective student board member and have a lot of exciting plans for the rest of the year. For events, the school is currently holding our annual holiday boutique where different clubs on campus can sell different items such as hot chocolate and stickers to the different students and teachers on campus. Our annual Tcusd outlet sale will be this Sunday, so make sure to head down to the high school student parking lot for this amazing event. The holiday concert will be this upcoming Tuesday, and the following week will be winter break, so that will be a nice time to relax and enjoy with others. That's all for today, and I wanted to wish everyone a Merry Christmas.
We'll move on to board member comments and start out with Dr. Lynn.
Thank you. Well,
President Donna Giorgino, and good evening, everyone. I hope everyone had a wonderful Thanksgiving break and was able to take some quality time off. Since we don't have student performances this evening, I do look forward to attending holiday programs at the school sites in the next couple of weeks. And also, since our next school board meeting is not until January 22nd, I wish everyone happy holidays and happy New Year.
Thank you. Next, Board Member Smith. I'm going in reverse alphabetical order by your first name.
Okay, first, there's only about 4 hours left in the day, but I did want to wish Donna Georgina a very happy birthday. She's got a few more hours to celebrate. She probably doesn't want to anywhere else but here. On the 14th of November, I had a chance to attend the Employee of the Year recognition luncheon here in this room, where we recognize employees from each of the different work groups, and I thought it was a very nice little affair. And congratulate all those employees who were selected. On the 15th, had a chance to attend the City District Ad Hoc Committee meeting across the street, talk about things we can do better together moving forward, including things like sharing facilities and whatnot. So we'll get to that at some point down the road a little more. I hope everybody had a nice Thanksgiving. It seems like it was a long time ago now. Like Samuel, I did have a chance to attend the CSBA conference down in San Diego. It was a 3-day conference last Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. There were a number of different study sessions, I guess I would call it, that I attended. I attended 8 of those. There were 3 keynote presentations, 1 each day. And I'll spare you reading down my list because I don't think you guys really want to listen to it all. But I do have a couple of things I do want to highlight, and I'm passing some handouts on. Actually, the first seminar I attended was a presentation on a tool called Forecast 5 Data Analytics. And basically it was a presentation by 2 superintendents in California and a 3rd assistant superintendent, as well as an individual from the company, Forecast 5. But it as a database that you can select, or you can actually input parameters and select comparable school districts throughout the state and find out what they're doing, what their scores are, how they've made progress, and I think it'd be something worth us looking at. I do want to say one of those superintendents was Gordon Amerson, who's the superintendent of Authority, so I'll pass this along, and I've got URLs to come to. The other one I thought was a really informative, very, very good seminar, or presentation. You can see how thick this is, because there's actually 5 different things. This was by the Solano Beach School District, and they talked about budget issues they were having in contention, and how they addressed it. And I think, you know, this was a year-long process for them, where they went through all the revenues, what the revenues really mean, all the expenses, what those expenses really mean, and the whole gamut. But so like I said, it's close to an inch thick. Good information. I truly mean that, and I think they all walked away. The teachers were involved, the parents were involved, the administrators were involved, the union representatives were involved, and I think they all walked away feeling a lot better about understanding each other and knowing that there's an element of trust that was probably missing at some point, and they were able to build on. The next one, not quite as exciting. This was Sunnyvale School District, and this was a presentation about interest-based bargaining. That's something we worked with Greg Dennis, who's an attorney, many, many years ago, and he was actually at this presentation. And it seemed a little more painful than it may have been worth it, I don't know, but I want to pass that along as well. And then lastly, leading from the front, driving improvement through effective superintendent evaluation. Just really talked about the importance of the board and the superintendent working together to define the goals for the district and set measurements and those kinds of things. So, and that's it. I do want to wish everybody a happy holiday season and happy New Year, and I hope you take some time to celebrate with your family and have some fun, especially when there's contentious issues, and I'm well aware of.
Member Espinosa.
All right, good evening, everybody. First, I want to thank everybody that came out tonight to have your voices heard and all the support along with those voices. I think it's a really important part of governance to hear your voices, for us to hear what you are thinking and feeling, and you know, we're not going to be effective without that. So know that your being here tonight is appreciated. So since we last met, I attended the full-time kindergarten staff feedback meeting over at Emperor. It was held, I think, on the 20th of November, to hear the teachers' feedback around this full-time kinder. It was very informative. I'm glad I was able to attend. And Josh, thanks for kind of facilitating that. You did a good job. Then other events in the community that I attended would be the PTA Council December meeting, Lights on Temple City, Breakfast with Santa at Emperor, and then last night the Performing Arts Holiday Show at the high school. So those were all nice. I was happy to be there and see what all the kids are working on, and having a lot of fun doing it. Last, I just want to wish everybody, the Temple City students, their families, all the employees in our district, a wonderful holiday season. May you enjoy the winter break with your families and have fun. So thank you.
Thank you. Member Nolenberg?
Yeah, just a couple of things. I attended the California School Board Association down in San Diego, along with a couple other board members. And I already passed the information on to the superintendent, the appropriate information I listened to. And one of the problems or concerns, I guess, of going down to San Diego or going up to San Francisco and listening to the School Board Association is they point out some of the problems that they have at other districts that we don't have so far. And those become very costly for us if we don't do the appropriate thing at the appropriate time. Also, I attended the city council meeting, and they've relaxed the parking requirements for the city of Temple City for cars only, not for mobile homes or anything else. The overnight parking restrictions have been lifted for the period of December 15th through January 6th. But doesn't mean that you can use our parking lot as a place to be able to park the cars, per se. And also I attended the luncheon that they had for some of our retirees and some of our people that were recognized for outstanding services here in the boardroom. That was very nice. And that's about it.
Thank you. And finally, me. First, I want to thank the individuals and organizations that made donations to the district during this past month, and there is a list in the board packet if you're interested. Since our last meeting, I attended the CSBA conference. I attended sessions on dual language immersion, evaluating the superintendent, CTE, wellness centers, student voices, and board self-evaluation. I'll talk a little bit about a couple of those later on in the meeting. I also attended the Tcusd Community Forum, in which members of the community were invited to come and give input on our mission, our vision, our goals. I attended a grad night work party. I also attended the employee luncheon where our certificated and classified employees of the year were honored, and congratulations to all of them. I attended a fundraiser along with the Espinosa family for La Rosa School for at the Habit in Rosemead, and boy, that looked like it was really successful, so hopefully they made a lot of money off of that. I attended Emperor College Day, which was really a great event. I had no idea this went on. They have, well, part of it is the UCLA-USC rivalry, but then they also had the kids doing research about other colleges, and they made posters, and they had a tailgate party, and it was really cute and really fun. So congratulations to Emperor for that. I attended the City of Temple City and the school district meeting along with Matt in November, and I think we've just been meeting this year. We've only met a couple times, but I think we're working towards being more collaborative and benefiting our community better. I wanted to congratulate Peter Trin, who is a senior at Temple City High School. He was selected All-CIF Division III water polo team. Also, Barry Bacon was chosen as the Ramrodder Coach of the Month for the girls golf team, which they had an excellent season. I want to congratulate Ellie Zellian, who had a signing ceremony last week, and she signed to play softball at Cal State Fullerton. Congratulations to Clarissa Hong, who represented Temple City in the CIF cross-country finals. And then the newest one is Sydney Chang, who has committed to attending UCLA playing water polo. So I believe they'll have a signing session for her sometime soon. This Saturday is a flea market at the high school that Ramrodders is putting on. It's a fundraiser for them. And I really wanted to give a shout out to them because they've been doing a great job this past year, really supporting our athletic programs. And they're doing all these signing ceremonies and recognizing coaches and scholar athletes. So I wanted to give a shout out to them. I think they're bringing our athletic programs to the next level. And finally, just happy holidays to everyone. Enjoy your time off and look forward to a prosperous 2020. Okay, and that's it. Next, we'll move on to the superintendent's comments.
Thank you, Madam President. First and foremost, I want to thank you all for coming out this evening. I think the most heavy responsibility we have in governance is providing and sustaining balance across the district. So I appreciate your voices, I appreciate your comments, I appreciate all of the things that you do day in and day out, all of the extra hours that you put in, the lesson plans that you make, the hours spent grading, and the time and attention paid to each other as staff, but also to our students, no matter what position that you have within the district. So please know that we do take that responsibility seriously, and we work diligently with our union leadership to make sure that we are moving forward in a fashion that is comfortable for everybody. So thank you for your voices, your comments tonight. They did not fall on deaf ears, and I just want to thank you all for being here. With that, I did attend the Holiday Boutique today at Temple City High School, and it was quite unique. Lots of different vendors and booths from students, and it was all student driven. So I just want to thank Kim Allen for putting that together, and it's a tradition that's been ongoing for quite some time. And it was quite a spectacle. I did get some holiday gifts at the boutique, so I appreciate all of the wonderful gifts that students had made. With regard to keeping and retaining enrollment across the district, I think that's something that we initially set forward as a goal of ours as administrators, looking at avenues to keep our Temple City students here and make sure that they have reason to come each and every day. With regard to taking credits off of our campus, we are truly looking at that. We've met with our counseling staff at the high school and also with the Senate at the high school, kind of looking at our board policies, what they say, what they don't. We're currently amending language that will be presented to the board in January. And we'll be bringing that language back for final read with the high school team there, meeting with the high school team to finalize some of those parts of the conversation next week at their staff meeting. Also currently meeting with the math departments at Oak and the high school with regard to the next curricular adoption and making sure that we are on pace with providing the curriculum to staff, but also looking at the courses that we currently have and evaluating that from their eyes. So I hope to give you a further update in the future regarding those conversations. So thank you, Dr. Porter, for this afternoon. And with that, I know that Ms. Sorrell had presented very positive news about our bond refinance, which was a great opportunity for us to go back and refinance some of the previously closed bonds. So I do have to officially provide the board members with letters signifying that I'm giving you two letters, one for the Series C bonds and then one for the refunding of the bonds. And that just completes the process according to Ed Code 1514. here are your copies. And then lastly, I truly want to wish all of our staff and all of our employees a very, very happy and restful holiday season. I know that it is much needed time with your friends and your family and enjoying all the good things that we have to celebrate. So thank you very much, and I wish you happy holidays.
Thank you. 17 is written communications. I don't have any. Does anyone else? We'll move on to discussion information items. Number 18 is San Gabriel Mission Playhouse update.
Okay, so in the past couple board meetings, we've discussed contracts affiliated with the San Gabriel Playhouse. I just wanted to give you an update on that. That the contracts have been signed for the following two events, the holiday concert, which is December, which is next week, and then also for the dance performance program, which is in January. So those contracts have been signed. We will be contacting the Tcusd Schools Foundation with regard to a joint venture into these contracts, and then we will be notating the expenditure in the budget as well as the ticket sale revenue, so that you can see those on the line items. It's very, very clear and transparent with regard to the accounting of that. So I just wanted to give you an update on where we were since our last board meeting.
I guess I had a question. What about the musical?
So the musical would come up for a different vote by the board to approve that contractual agreement. The agreement that was approved was just for these two contractual agreements.
So when would we have that on the agenda?
We can place it on the agenda if you'd like to place it on the agenda.
Yes, we need to do something, right?
Yeah, I agree, it needs to be on the next.
Awesome. Okay, great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? All right, we'll move on to 19, school start time presentation. Dr. Porter?
Yeah, thank you. This is just a quick overview. It was asked of us to come back with some brief information about the Senate Bill 328 that was signed into law by Governor Newsom. This is just a handout that I had provided in the packet as an exhibit. Basically, in kind of short, it mandates middle schools not start until 8 a.m., mandates high schools not start until 8:30 a.m. There are some exclusions for rural districts. Zero period is specifically excluded as an option for students at the start time in this evaluation. Elementary schools were not affected, and it requires state to post information on the impact of sleep deprivation. That was the nutshell of the bill. The review start times, when we look at Temple City High School and Oak, you'll see that Oak is not directly affected by this start time due to its current time of 8:35. However, Temple City's current start time would be directly affected by this. That does not have a direct effect to Oak. However, what we'll note a little bit later in the bullet points down there, if Oak and Temple City High School were to start at the same time, there'd be some significant traffic concerns and safety concerns there. So we would have to address those. And so some considerations for us to work on over the next 2-year period. Currently 971, or 50% of the student body attending Temple City, are enrolled in a zero-period course. We participate in a number of extracurricular events each year that currently begin at the end of the school day and would be affected by this adjustment. We talked a little bit briefly about the start times conflicting with Oak or competing with Oak with traffic. Students utilizing transportation offered by Temple City Unified School District would be directly affected. Those would primarily be our students who receive transportation as part of an individual education program. And then there are any potential impacts on staffing and bargaining, language things that I may not be aware of, that would be another one to make sure we consider, and we have to work with all stakeholders. So initially the rollout, this has to be in effect by the 22-23 school year. So that gives us time to work through this with all necessary parties. We would have to review the intermediate high school bell schedules with all key stakeholders. Then we'd have to develop collaboratively a draft schedule, review possible impacts with the student, community, businesses, everyone involved. And then we'd review those impacts and adjust resources to support and implement for the 2022 and 2023 school year. So I've attached for your reading a copy of the bill that was provided by the state.
I had a question, as part of all the scenarios that you're looking at, and I know Oak is not immediately impacted, but what, are we looking at what the impact would be if we just reversed the start times and said Oak starts at 8 and high school starts at 8:30?
I would presume that would be a consideration we would absolutely look at. I don't think anything is off the table at this point. I think we want what's best for the staff, the students, the community, all at once. We want to make sure everybody's safe when they go there. I don't know that direct impact at this point in time. Right now, high school is going to be the one that we're locked into, that we have to work backward from that.
Because I'm just thinking about the traffic concerns, because it's a big one.
Yeah, it's even now, it's a concern.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right, so, yes, thanks. Member Oliver?
Yes, you mentioned the high school, is Doug Sears Learning Center affected as well?
Any high school will be affected by that. Any change, they would have to start at that time. So what that looks like, we'll factor all of those in to make sure that we take that into consideration and account.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. Next is back to you, Dr. Porter, data presentation.
Okay, this is one of those times where, I don't know if you guys know, data is one of those things where it's a good time to celebrate all the good things that are happening out there. I know right now there's a lot we've been talking about, and I apologize for last month not being here to expedite this presentation to everybody. But this presentation today is really going to highlight and talk about all of the data that's gathered by the state and that we use to evaluate our progress. Primarily, we see a lot of that in reference of the dashboard, which we'll share some of those examples with you.
Are we going to show it on the slide presentation here?
It should be going.
Okay.
Oh, there we go. So, basically, why do we use data? Why is it something we look at? Data, we use it as a powerful tool for improving student learning, guiding professional development, measuring our progress. Effective use of data, it really ensures the appropriate accountability, guides our resources, and just ensures that every child learns. So that's kind of a quick little overview. Data is used in a number of ways, but specifically the way it's used and how it directly affects the body here. The Every Student Succeeds Act requires examination school level reporting of the data on student progress, resource allocation, and spending. These data measures form the basis of goals and related to actions to remediate within district inequities across school sites. School plans for student achievement, which are currently under progress or underway right now, those will be coming to you very shortly. They're aligned with our local accountability plan, our LCAP, and use school level data to report on progress. Specifically, something we'll see today would be our student achievement with regards to ELs, or students with special needs and IEPs. This information is used to examine district-wide practices with the vision of improving transparency in teaching and learning conditions. The number one, the most common way now to view our data is through the dashboard. This was newly implemented by the state of California. It uses a little bit different model to show our data instead of comparing us with similar districts like it used to be with our UIP or API. Right now, it's really primarily comparing us as a baseline with what the state feels we should be performing in comparison to how we performed in previous years. Yes?
And the parents can get access to the dashboard?
Correct. This is a public record for anybody that can search in Temple City Unified School District. Performance is based on academic year's growth. The improvement of results are compared to years prior. State measures include, these are mandated measurements, they look at content absenteeism, graduation rate, and overall academics. So what you'll see currently on the dashboard right now, which goes back to 2018, the 2019 hasn't been updated yet. We reported an enrollment of 5,831 students. Of those, 44.6% are socioeconomically disadvantaged. Currently, right now, what I can share with you that we have with preliminary reports is that percentage has decreased by a few points. English learners comprised at the time of 19.7% of the enrollment, and 0.1% were considered foster youth. The dashboard has a color indicator marker on it, and it's meant to be a quick visual representation, so anybody looking at it can see whether it was a positive or negative or area of concern. You will always see the dashboard represent red as being an area of grave concern or need of immediate improvement. The orange is an area of concern. Yellow is a cautionary area. Green is good, and blue is you're hitting the mark where you need to be, and there's no concerns to keep doing what you're doing. So you look there with our chronic absenteeism, it seems to be our area of specific concern. But we'll talk a little bit about what that would look like with those numbers and where that might be coming from a little bit later. Looking at our 2-year trend, this looks at, it's measured within a 5-point system. So if you take each one of those colors, whether it be the red, the orange, yellow, green, or blue, the 1 would be the red, 5 being blue. We don't have chronic absentee data from the previous year prior to this, which is why we're showing a significant area of needed improvement. Absenteeism is something of a concern. Most of those, a lot of those may be even excused absences or just overall. But it doesn't give us a comparison to work off of. So essentially we could improve that by a certain percentage point and we could hit the green with very little progress. So we really need to see the 3 to 4 year data on that one. English learners, that data is late. The state has not released that data up until earlier this December. So we won't have comparable data on that for another month or so. Our suspension rate measures the number or percentage of students suspended per population, and it does break it down by subgroup. Currently, we're in a 5 for both those the past 5 years, which is indicative of a lower discipline rate. Graduation rate is maintaining its 5s across the board. College and career readiness last year was recorded as a 4 when we had our first reportable data. Area of English language arts maintained their area of a 4, and mathematics increased to a 5 from the year previous. So we're going to talk a little bit about those local indicators and what they look like. Basically, they reflect the emphasis of local control and provide necessary data for our stakeholders to engage in meaningful discussions. They inform the LCAP. But these are the ones that we evaluate that look at the basic conditions of the school that we self-report on, implementation of state academic standards, parent and family engagement opportunities, overall school climate, and access to a broad course of study. So in 2018, below, you'll see that we've snipped a little bit of it. Each one of those self-reports that we indicated all indicate that we met those standards and that we're at or above the necessary measures in each of those 5 areas. When we look at the conditions of learning, this is part of our LCAP Goal 1, as kind of a review for the board here, but for everyone else out there. The district, we're saying that we will maintain and improve conditions of learning. To this end, the district will hire, train, and retain the best, most effective, fully credentialed, appropriately assigned teachers and staff. It will work to ensure an effective and engaging learning environment for providing students access to the most updated equipment and facilities. The district will also work toward providing students and staff members access to the best tools and resources, including standards-aligned instructional materials. Goal 2 talks about pupil achievement. Temple City Unified will increase pupil achievement levels, paying mindful attention to students who may need additional supports or scaffolds for academic success. Will maintain its status, change levels of the California School Dashboard, and will help students thrive in safe environments and feel a sense of connection to school. And we'll look at Goal 3 with parent involvement and student engagement and school climate. The district has a continuing need to provide all students opportunities to build school connectedness. The district will engage and empower parents and guardians to be active participants in their childhood experiences. We'll provide student support systems to help every student meet graduation requirements and be prepared for college, career, life, and we'll provide all students and staff with support programs and systems that focus on character and social emotional supports. Now, looking at our dashboard indicators here for 2018, I'm going to walk you through a couple of the data points that you'll see up there currently online. Looking at English language arts, you'll see that we're in the green area, and looking at mathematics, you'll see that we're in the blue area. Currently, English language arts is about 39.9 points above the standard, and what that is, the state takes the standard of, say, a level 3 as a baseline. We look at our growth and where our students' average performance is above or below that baseline. Comparative to last year, and the baseline will change, comparative to last year, our students declined approximately 6 points. Now that 6-point decline was not considered significant enough to move us away from that band, so we maintained the same band that we were last year. Part of that is in part due to some of our, the fluctuation and change with students who enter and exit the testing phase. So for example, at the high school, we only test at the junior level, so you can see an increase or decrease with students with target subgroups. You also see a change in tests and how those tests are administered, because they're not the same test every year. In mathematics, you'll see we maintained our standard points within 2.6 points, so we maintained the blue to where we were. Our English language, English learner progress and achievement for California results. Overall, level 4 well developed, about 40% of them hit a level 4, with 30% at 3. And then you'll see our targeted areas of a 2 and a 1, where they somewhat developed in beginning stages, where some of that could be related to newcomers newer here, or some who need to do some more work to provide support. Our current enrollment, this is something that we'll look at as we report our information to the state, but this is what we have as of this year. Temple City High School is currently reporting at 1,912 students. Of that, we wanted to let you know the percentage of students who are in on transfers. So those who are in on the Allen bill or who are Tcusd employees, these are the ones that typically would come here under state law. It was about 3.5% total. While we have a 4.4% transfer under SELPA, which are some of our special students, and then we have about 9.8% of those students on inter-district transfers, those coming from out of the district.
Just a quick question. What is the difference between Allen Bell and TCUSD employees? I thought they were both employees.
Allen Bill could be those living within the city limits or working within the city. Yeah, I'm sorry, not living, working. I apologize for that.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. Oak is at 913, and you can see very similar numbers across the board with regards to their the numbers with the transfers. Cloverly, Longden, Emperor, and La Rosa. Cloverly's at 444. Longden's 992. Emperor is 689. At Emperor, 22.2% of the students, however, are intra-district transfers, so they're coming from other school sites. And La Rosa is currently sitting at 12.9% with Allen Bill.
When we say intra, sorry, do we mean inter or intra?
Intra. Those are, so it would be those who would currently be able to attend, like Longden, for example. They would transfer to Emperor.
Do we have permits for each of these?
All of these would be legally transferred with either through an intra permit or an inter-district permit released from their district.
Is there something unique to La Rosa that has the Allen bill number at 12% where everybody else is?
You know what, I don't have that information in front of me, and I apologize, that's something I'd have to gather and come back to bring if you'd like me to.
Just curious.
Okay. Overall, district enrollment sitting at 5582. You can see the overall percentage numbers there. It's just something, food for thought, information for you to have as we move forward with some of the other data. It does not necessarily show, we did not break down, the state does not break it down by transfer or not in our student data. So overall student performance, this gives us a breakdown of how our students performed last year. And these numbers, they're really good numbers comparatively speaking, and I'll show you with some of the districts. And some districts will perform higher, some may not. But overall, we're seeing a very significant amount of success. When you look at 69% of our students, if you look at the mean standards and above, are doing well in overall English language arts performance within Temple City Unified School District. This is inclusive of K-12 data. Looking at mathematics, we're looking at a 68% overall, whether they meet or exceed standards. 3-year trends, you'll see going back to 2017 with ELA, if you look at the 33 and 36%, you'll see that the 33 pretty much maintained itself in meeting it, and we're seeing a slight increase in percentage of those who are exceeding that standards. We're seeing a slight bump in each one of those areas. The data itself would show you, and we would have to make some determinations as to where our focus would be, looking at the other subgroups below, at those that have not yet met those standards. And that would help kind of guide some of our goal setting that we do. Mathematics, in 2019, you'll see that we had a little bit of a bump, quite a bit of a bump, and then it maintained itself, I'd say, in 2018, but then there was a slight decrease in 2017. However, the overall numbers about balanced out a little bit. We're still maintaining that net exceeds the average. English learner performance data. This is an area where we're seeing some growth, but this is an area where we are definitely looking at how we can try to find some supports or show some improvement. You'll see a slight increase in those that have exceeded in the 3, 4s, and 6s, and a slight increase in maintaining those that have met the standards. Interestingly, this percentage to our population is increasing slightly over the years, and so that's something that we'll have to watch because in light of some of that data change. The English learner performance data in mathematics has been pretty consistent in the areas of METs and exceeds over the past 3 years. But what we saw last year was a slight increase in the number who did not meet that. But again, it's hard to tell what that specific number would be in relation to the assessments that we did. Students with disabilities. This is something that has shifted quite a bit in the area of mathematics. These are any student who would have an individualized education plan. They still take our state assessments. They are measured and they are part of our evaluation of growth. You'll see that we have about a steady average of those who are standards not met, and this would also be inclusive of any student who would perhaps have a lower cognitive level, who have agreed to take the test or wanted to take the test, anybody who's struggling through years. It doesn't necessarily highlight the progress that they've made over the years within this assessment. But we'll see that that has been pretty consistent with the exception of the exceeds has gone down into the METS level. Students with disability performance data in mathematics is mirroring that and reflective of that of the ELA as well. So district comparison. This is something where we pulled in some of those who they would not necessarily match demographically with ours. We wanted to pull in some local districts as well as just kind of some neighboring districts, and then also show a comparison within California. So currently right now in ELA we're looking at 38%, 33%. When you compare us with San Marino or Arcadia, you'll see that they're slightly higher than us. With San Marino showing a little bit more than Arcadia. And South Pasadena showing an increase as well. When compared to Monrovia and Duarte, our numbers are slightly higher than theirs, but in both cases, or in all cases, we're significantly higher than the state average. In math, you'll see a very similar trend as we saw in ELA, very significant growth when comparison to the state, and even more so in some of our other districts. When compared to some of our neighboring districts and some of the other ones we look at, again, it could be apples to oranges at this point because you don't have similar demographic data to compare to. By school breakdown, if you wanted to, what we looked at for 2019, when they reported last year, Cloverly, 67% ELA, 68% mathematics, Emperor, 74%, 73%, La Rosa, 69 and 71 respectively, Moline at 66, 70, and then you see Oak at 74 and 68, and Temple City High School at 73 and 62. We're going to shift gears a little bit here to do measure our college and career readiness. We want to take a moment to highlight a lot of the successes we've seen within all the schools. So even with amongst the data you see here where some may have not met those standards and what they're doing, there's still a lot of preparedness that our teachers and staff have been doing or working with our students to help them move on to their, be prepared for college or their career. When you look at the percentage of students that attended or a 4-year public or private school, it's about 47.27%, and of those that applied or put in admissions for a 2-year public school, it's 42.02%. So in all, it's about 89% of our students are prepared or ready to go to some sort of college, and this is taken directly from our data within the Dr. Yes, thank you very much. Also data that's not up there that I thought I would share with you. The state also reports that 70% of our students, the way they figure it, are college and career ready based on the numbers that we have. And I'll talk about that just briefly here as well, with 13% approaching it. So their numbers are matching ours and what they perceive as being ready where our kids are going. Yes?
So when we assign a number to a student, instead of their name, we track them down all the way through high school and through college?
So we don't have all of the full data through college. What we have is what they reported or what they went through the past few years. Now, moving forward from this year forward, we're looking at longitudinal data because we'd like to see, we want to see how many of our students not only attend college, but how many of them persist through that and what they do through that process. So.
What kind of classes they take?
Correct, and then we'd be able to look at our programs and find our successes, because we can't measure the success of our students off of one test. And that's where I want to touch base quickly back on the college and career readiness, is that the assessment that we see the data on is just one piece of the evaluation as to whether or not our students are college and career ready. Many of this has to do with their academic record. They'll look at the number of classes they've taken that were whether A2G compliant, or any pathways that they would have taken. The college application data, this is the applicants by college. This was kind of a fun fact I thought I would share with you. The number of students, overall there were 495 students, and of that 2,659 applications were completed last year, and the number accepted was 1,153. Now, that number is higher because many of our students do get accepted into more than one college, so you're going to see that number significantly higher. And it's just kind of an interesting point of thought. The top schools are listed up there. And you know, as much as I would like to see USC a little bit higher, UCLA did. Yeah, so I had to concede to that. I thought that was quite awesome, and you know, and I don't know that Myra would be happy with me sharing that information. So.
Do you guys track any colleges that are out of state or part of universities that they would be attending?
No, you'll see some of them up there, like New York University, Boston University, some of those. We do not track non-four-year schools that are out of state, though. So if they would go to a two-year school that's out of state, some of them will have good transfer programs. It's my understanding we don't have that data yet, or have that, but that's just something I did not see or observe. So. Oh, Ken, sorry.
When the students put in the application, the 2,600, do they put a fee or anything that we pay for, or they have?
So many of these students, this is college that's post us when they're applying for this, so they will be paying the majority of fees if applicable. The students who are on free reduced lunch or who qualify for a reduced fee application will maintain that qualification. They will apply through like UC Norways or things like that, where they'll put in their information, and if they get a fee waiver, it'll be awarded to them.
But it can be a recurring expense, right?
Correct.
Just put in each application.
Each application.
$50, $60.
Correct. And
average.
And some students can put in 10, 20, I've seen as high as 30 applications go out. Yeah, even higher. I would agree. So we're going to look at some of our AP data as that contributes to the college and career readiness indicator. And it's just information to share with you. The number of students enrolled in an AP class over the past 4 years has been, you'll see, it was at 578. It increased a little bit. And then back in 1819, it decreased back to 582. That's predominantly determined, from my understanding, from the data I could evaluate, is that's the office student determination or student choice. The number of students taking an AP test is slightly lower in each of those brackets, and that's not uncommon to see, because not every student feels like they are prepared to take the examination after taking the class. The overall pass rate for Temple City High School is actually quite high. This is something that really definitely be celebrated. We're almost in the 80% range with dropping, so you see an increase in 17-18 of students taking the class. The pass rate dropped a little bit from there. However, in 18-19 school year, we did see a 79% pass rate, which is pretty awesome. I think definitely we're celebrating a little bit there. Exam results, looking at the number of exams. This is how the AP exam is scored on a 5-point rubric. And so you're looking at a pass rate, really, a score of 3 or better. However, AP exams taken by students receiving a 4 or 5 is typically what a lot of the universities say counts as AP credit. So we give you both breakdowns. While you'll see about 79% are recorded as passing the AP exam. And we also look at the percentage of 4s and 5s, which would be those exemplar scores, not to deny the threes, I mean, that is phenomenal in itself. But that 53% of those 80% are scoring, and the scores are a 4 or 5, and so it's still a pretty high number, and it's a testament to our instruction in the classroom and the students' effort. And so that brings us to the conclusion of that dry data that I love, but I want to share with everyone out there to take a moment to talk about the good things they were doing out there.
Thank
Yes.
you. Go ahead.
Just a general question. More of a general question. This is just one of many things the principal at each school does to perform a evaluation of the student, right?
Yeah, this would be one piece of, we're looking at student progress and student performance. A lot of times we'll look at grades, and in other cases we look at their classes and how they're able to fulfill their course requirements.
And so if a student is below par and needs special help, then we give it to them.
At this point in time, there are many programs in place to help support most of those students out there. But as always, we're always looking to refine our process and improve upon that.
Any other questions? All right, thank you very much. We'll move on to our discussion action items. Number 21 is receive board policies for first reading. It's board bylaws 9320, meetings and notices. Dr. Berger, do you want to explain what this is?
Yes, so this was what you're referring to in the board reorg, and what we would want to do is reauthorize board bylaw 9320 with regard to the board meetings, and that would be with the added exemption of one meeting in November and one meeting in January due to the holiday and the break situation. So those would be added into the board bylaw should this pass by the board.
Can I get a motion and a second, please?
So moved.
Second. Motion by Member Smith and second by Member Espinosa. Okay, is there any discussion or questions? Okay, we'll start off with our student board member. Would you like to vote on this?
Yes.
Okay. And then the rest of the board, if you're in approval, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes 501. The one being Samuel's affirmative. Next, we'll move on to item number 22, which is receive and file the 2018-19 annual audit report. And Mary Ann Sorrell, did you want to tell us about this?
We actually have our audit manager here to present this evening.
Okay, great.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me here. Just a little background on our firm. For those who may not know, we actually merged with Ike Bailey, previously Vavernick Trying Day Company, and in July of this year we merged with a different firm, so we are now known as Ike Bailey. For those who are familiar with Vavernick Trying Day, I believe we have two reports that we're going to go through. I'm going to go ahead and go through Measure S first. It is quite smaller, and just really kind of get through that. Our purpose for this particular report is to ensure that the bonds are being spent according to what the board has agreed on the ballot. On page 2.
I'm sorry, one second. Do we need to, because I think we motioned to do the audit report first, so we have to motion for
We
that.
haven't made any motions yet, so we'll let her go ahead and give the reports, and then we'll motion them in order.
Okay.
On page 2 of the bond report, which I believe you guys have, is Measure S. This lays out management's responsibilities as well as the auditor's responsibilities. Our results on this is actually on page 2 with our opinion, stating that the Measure S is reasonably stated. A couple of things that I like to point out is the balance sheet, which goes into page 4. This really just shows the remaining monies that you have within the bonds that have been issued in total. There still are outstanding authorized bonds out there, but this is really what the district has received in the remaining portion of them. On page 5 really shows the activities within the Measure S bond, showing the interest income as well as all the expenses and how they're laid out. Kind of towards the back, so this is related to the financial statements. The other piece of it is compliance, where we actually take the ballot in which the voters agreed upon, and we test accordingly. So we take your expenditures under Measure S, and we ensure that it was spent according to what the ballot states, as well as the schools that are applied. That is going to be towards the back. So if you kind of look towards the back, page 4. For 3 and 4, it really lays out our objectives of the audit, and that's starting on page 3 of the performance, which we ensure that, of course, the funds are being deposited properly as well as being spent. A little bit of our results, we tested about 40 transactions for the district that covered about 81% of the expenses, and we found no non-compliance issues. So everything was spent according to what we tested, according to the bonds, the ballots that were approved on with the voters. Does anybody have any questions on the Measure S? So I'm going to go ahead and move on to the bigger report, which this is covering the district as a whole. Again, our main opinion is on page 2, starting on page 2. This lays out management's responsibilities and the financial statements as well as the auditor's responsibilities. We did give a modified opinion, which is a clean opinion. These reports are fairly stated according to our auditing standards. One of the things that I'd like to point out is we do provide additional opinions over the financial statements, internal controls. We give an opinion over the federal awards as well as the state awards. In all 3 areas, you got clean opinions, which is unmodified, so that's the best opinion you can get. We didn't find any non-compliance within the federal or state requirements. Federal awards, we have to select various programs to be tested, a little bit more emphasis in procedures. This is based on different criteria. For the current year, child nutrition cluster was actually selected for your district. So we did expand the testing on that particular program, and we found no non-compliance as well. The other thing that I'd like to point out is with regards to your pension, that tends to be quite a big number for every district out there. So if you look at the trends of your pension liability, and this goes with the pension PERS and STIRS, there is this unfunded portion that everybody is probably fully aware of. The state does not have enough assets to cover the pension liability that exists at the time. The district share for the moment is about $46 million. That's what I think. The trend is moving upwards, so it's definitely something to think about when in regards to any activity with the district. On page 70, you can really see the trend from 2015 to 2019 as far as where that liability and how it's been increasing over time.
That liability now is reflected on our balance sheet?
Yes.
And does it affect our ability to get funds and get a good interest rate?
I think a lot of debt people, any underwriters and so forth, they really have understood what this pension liability means. I think when the pension liability first came into the financials, we were really concerned in what that would do with the district's rating as far as being able to offer debt, authorize debt, and sell debt. To this day, we don't see any issues with that. I think they're fully aware that this is a liability that no district is expected to really fund within 1 year. So I think they're definitely taking into consideration that that is a number that represents truly the overall state of California, not necessarily just the district as a whole.
Do they expect that a school district to take little bites of the liability?
Unfortunately, with the pension going up and up, I think really where you have to look at is the percentages in which the district is required to contribute when it comes to STRS and PERS. We always look at it in a 3-year basis, and we just go based on the new rules, the new percentages that are released every single year, and how the district responds to it. We can only kind of go from what the district tells us and look at budget-wise and see what the effect are. Any questions on the district report?
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Now I'll entertain a motion to receive and file the 2018, 2019 annual audit report.
So moved.
Okay, motion by member Smith, second by member Nollenberg. Okay, our student board member, would you like to vote on this?
Augustine.
Okay. Is there any questions or discussion? All right, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, passes 5-0. We'll move on to receive and file the 2018-19 annual audit report for Measure S. Do you have a motion and a second, please?
So moved.
Okay, motion by member Smith, second by member Lynn. So I vote on this one?
I'll stay for this one too.
Oh, okay. Any further questions or discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that passes 5-0. All right, now we'll move on to item 24, which is approve Civic Center Act facility use fee study, and I'm sorry. Yes, yes, we'll have Michael Mendoza, I'm sorry.
Good evening. I'm the president of the Pacific National Little League. Worked with Marion in the past, went over the report that she provided me with that was done, I guess, 4 or 5 years ago now. I did a lot of research last year on neighboring organizations, other organizations, other boards, state board, school board districts within the state of California, and the majority, if not all, do not charge for that green space. We leave it. So I just think that's an item that should be addressed. I understand all the other items and charges that go with it, for example, having the janitor, the porta potty, and all the other items typically have to deal with or connect in some way, shape, or form with contracts or insurance, but the field space is already there and paid for by taxpayer dollars. And again, all the neighboring districts and majority of the districts in the state of California, they don't charge for the field space because it's already paid by taxpayer dollars. So just I hope that the board can address that item. That would be a huge item for all the nonprofit organizations. Thank you.
Thank you. Marianne, would you like to explain what this is?
So at the last board meeting, we went through the last study that was done and a request to have approval from the board to have another study done. The first study was done with only 1 level of pricing, and there should actually be 3 levels of pricing. So we'd like to go out for an RFP and find vendors who will bid to do that job.
So just for the audience, to say, could you explain to them the 3 levels so they know that how it'll impact them?
Absolutely. So there's a level for nonprofits, there's a level for like church organizations, and then there's a level for for-profit organizations in general.
Thank you. Okay, would someone like to make a motion and a second, please?
So moved.
Motion by member Smith.
Second.
Second by member Lynn. Okay, is there any more discussion or questions?
I did have a question.
Yes.
What does it cost to have this fee study done?
So we'll put an RFP out, and then I'll be able to come back to you with pricing from multiple vendors. I don't have that pricing quite yet.
And so currently, I think we have some type of board rule that says we're not going to be charging our nonprofits that support the students of this district directly.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a board rule?
I'd have to pull policy. I don't believe that is in the board policy.
It's not.
That's the problem.
It's not currently in our board policies, no.
It's not.
Well, what is
But we
this
don't.
here in the staff report? It says, in addition, the board policy states that the board will grant use of facilities in our grounds without charge to school-related organizations whose activities directly relate to or benefit the district schools. So we don't have that, or it's, I don't know. I think it's
That's
you're
what I'm
asking.
that's what I'm referencing.
It says it was passed on July 15th, 2016.
Oh, I'm not familiar with that. We were familiar with a practice versus a policy. So in looking at the facility use in total, we are trying to clean up our facility use policies in general, having board consensus on direction moving forward with regard to being in compliance with the Civics Act.
Because I think I want to be clear that, you know, I understand, you know, the act that you're referring to, you read it. I think our district is unique in that we want to encourage the support of the community, and we need to do that. And I'm just concerned that this study is going to lock us into something about, you know, related to charging people that don't currently pay or charging higher fees, and I'm not in support of that.
I think the intent is exactly the opposite.
You think it's gonna have an opposite effect?
Exactly the opposite, so.
Okay, so is it the same company that gave us the fee schedule back 4 years ago, a new company? What is?
I'm looking at new vendors, because Delinka didn't provide us with the proper 3 levels of pricing. So I'm looking for other vendors.
So are we thinking that the fee study done in 2016, I think it was not appropriate, like overcharging? What did we think about that study?
I can tell you from years back that prior to that study, it was a lot different, a lot more feasible for these groups to participate.
Right, so are we saying we didn't have a good resource for that in that study?
I unfortunately can't predict what the numbers will come back with, but what I can predict is that there will be the 3 levels. And the school-related always have a lower level than the for-profits. The board can always make a decision once those numbers come to be of what they want to implement. It's a nice guideline for you.
Yeah, I'm referring to the study that was done in 2016. I just want to know about how we came up, did we do an RFP for that?
Yes,
for that
we did.
study? And we came back with that vendor who we're not trusting their numbers.
I trust their numbers. They should have provided us with 3 levels of charges rather than only 1.
Okay.
That's the issue.
All right, so we're just here tonight just to approve a fee study, but we're not, the idea of adopting the fees is a whole separate.
That's absolutely accurate. This is simply a study.
Okay, all right, thank you for that.
Step 1.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, our student board member, would you like to vote on this?
Yes.
You're voting yes?
Yes.
Okay, great. And then for the rest of the board, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, passes 5-0-1. Move on to item 25, which is approval of the purchase of a new storage shed for facility services, equipment, and supplies. And Marianne, would you like to briefly tell us what this is about?
Sure. You may recall that we presented a study from the Temple City High School storage, and that's for all the external groups, as well as our sporting groups and our facility services. And I went to each of the storage areas, and if we do this, we're able to give that one shed 100% to grad night, and we're also able to keep all of our assets safe. We've had quite a bit of damage and vandalism done to our very expensive lawn equipment, and we can also put supplies there for facilities.
Okay, thank you. All right, would someone like to make a motion and a second?
I'll motion.
Second.
Motion by member Espinoza and second by member Lynn. Any questions or comments?
So are we, in this motion, are we saying that the items listed, like the football team, it's shed number 3, we actually voting on, they get these sheds?
What you're actually voting on is the addition of one additional shed.
That are expensive,
Yes,
and we get to use them.
it would be for facility services to have equipment and supplies.
And we use all of them. They're all used for our students.
And that purchase would free up space for like grabbing
Yes.
on space.
As soon as it's, if you approve it this evening, as soon as it's built, then we would exit the grad night altogether, and we would be able to put all our equipment inside. There is one more step we'll do, is we're gonna work with the new athletic director to reorganize all of the sports equipment. We had someone transition out, and so we wanna let the new person get their feet underneath them for a minute before we go through that. But that's the other piece of the plan.
So the 51,000 covers labor as well as materials, right?
Yes.
Any other?
It had the concrete slab and it had the actual building and stuff, which was last board meeting.
Yes.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, our student board member, would you like to vote on this?
I vote yes.
Okay, and for the rest of the board, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, passes 5-0-1. Item 26 is approval of the 2019-2020 first interim financial report.
Which one? Yes.
Explain that to us.
I'm very sorry, this evening, as we were heading downstairs, I got a fatal error on my laptop. So Monica's gonna help me out, I apologize. Thanks.
Thank you.
So tonight, first I want to thank Jolene Weiss for all of her help in developing the first interim. Forgot last time. So tonight we're presenting the first interim report for your approval. This information goes to LACO and then it goes ultimately to the state. First and second interim are all done with the SACS coding structure, which is used throughout the state, and then the state compiles all of our information together. In prior years, we've sent the file to the county by December 16th, but this year they've asked it for by December 9th, which is before the meeting, and then we send a second one after you accept it this evening. So the first interim is an updated projected budget for 2019 through 2021-22, and this is based on October 31st financial results, and those are generally available about mid-November. It includes any updates for revenue, expense, anything that's happened since July 1. It's required to be, as I said, by the 9th for LACO, and the projections of 2019, 20, 21, and 22 are also required by the state and by the county. Excuse me. There are 3 levels. Oh, sorry. Next one. Thank you, Vanna. There are 3 levels of certification by the county and by the state: positive, qualified, and negative. We have always had a positive, and we are currently in a positive situation. The next one is a graphical depiction of where our revenue comes from. So 84.5% comes from LCFF, and LCFF is state funding. We'll be getting an update in January. Just in a few weeks, we'll go for the governor's update. Federal revenue is about 4%, other state is 3.1%, and other local is 8.4%. The next slide is our expenditures. Our certificated salaries, and that includes all statutory benefits like STRS and all the other federal taxes, is about 42.8, classified at 15.1, and all benefits are 20.1 for overall. Books and supplies is at 5.1%, and other operating is 11.1, and capital outlay is 5.8. Excuse me. This next slide is showing you the board approved budget that was done end of June, comparing to the projected or first interim 1920. The second year is 2021 and 21-22. So LCFF has had a small increase of 7402. There was a little error in the LCFF calculator that was corrected, so it's not a major change, but that's reflected here. The federal government does its budget in November, so we have to do our budget in June, doing our best estimates of what school services tells us, and some other, LACO gives us some advice as well, and then we get a final update from the feds in November. So we had a small increase of about $47,000 there. In other states, it's down only $391, excuse me, and that was, they took back some state mental health funds. The revenue is all based on ADA, average daily attendance, and the students that are TK through 3 are 7,702. 4 to 6 is 7,818, 7 to 8 is 8,050, and 9 to 12 is 9,329. And this does include the COLA for the year for those revenues. In expenditures, there's an increase of salary by $79.25, and that was a little bit of a change between Medi-Cal funds being able to cover a portion of someone's salary. Those that has decreased, so it's not being picked up by the general fund. Books and supplies increased by $19,881. The majority of that is an increase from federal titles. So for Title 1, 2, 3, and 4, in November we received an additional nearly $20,000. Operating has increased by $228. One of those items is a budget adjustment we brought to you for $200,000 related to some special ed settlements that had not been budgeted for.
Mary, quick question.
Sure.
This is line number 7.
Yes.
There's a line, I think third one from the bottom, OPEB.
Yes.
250, 500,000, 750,000. Is that already approved?
So I'll explain that to you. Sorry, you jumped ahead of me. Okay, so the board has been approving $250,000 a year for OPEB each year. And so each time we do a budget, that comes to you and you approve it or you don't. So that's the same $250,000 in the first 2 columns. It's not an additional. We're making an assumption, in one of the budget assumptions was that you would do that in the 2 out years. So it's not 500 in 2021, that includes the 250 from the year before, because this is the reserve. So until I move that money into the OPEB fund, it's sitting in Fund 1 right now, so it's reserved, because the plan is to transfer it to the OPEB fund.
So it's cumulative.
Exactly.
So, and we haven't put it in a lockbox.
No.
So it's free money in a sense. It can be moved anywhere we want.
It's not in an irrevocable trust.
It's not in any kind of trust, not revocable or irrevocable, so that would be the board's decision if they wanted to move that money or use it for something else. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. So we'll flip to reserves. Excuse me. So this is the reserve. Again, 1920, an initial budget projected in the out 2 years. The revolving cash is $15,000 that we keep in a checkbook upstairs, and that's only for emergencies. The number 2 and 3 are the designated reserves, so the 3% is the state required, and the 2% is the board required. Legally restricted reserve, that's money that is related to restricted money, which is generally coming from federal funds. So that's not available to be used for salaries unless it was for a particular program, but not an overall change. We have some LCFF targeted, that is unrestricted money, and currently it's being reserved across the years for adoptions, wonders, and secondary adoptions. And some money also from restricted lottery, which has to be used for materials or curriculum. That's being reserved to be used for adoptions that are coming. There will be more detail from Ed Services on the adoptions and the timing in a future board meeting. We have flyer fees, and that's fees that we charge for people to pass out flyers to students through the school district. Cell tower, that is for the rental of the cell towers that are on this building and at the high school. So that's what's sitting in that fund now. In that account now. ESMA is money that we get in for referring people to services that Medicare or Medi-Cal cover. The union health and welfare, what that is some union members waive their benefits. So they don't use their $9,000 to buy benefits. So it goes into a pool. And then we work with each union president at the beginning of the year once everyone's made their selections, and they decide how they want to share that pool amongst themselves. So that's not district money, that's staff money, but it's kept on the books, and that is reserved for them. The low performance grant is a grant that we received last year, and Ed Services is still developing their plans for the use of that money, and we'll be getting back to you for that. The next one is the classified professional development, and Monica's putting together some staff development for the classified folks, and we'll be back shortly with a plan for that amount of money, and that can only be used for that. The OPEB is the one we just talked about, and then the very last line is the unallocated reserve. So that is something that hasn't been allocated to any of the items we've mentioned above, and then the total reserve is at the bottom.
And how much of unallocated reserve is one time versus ongoing?
So I would have to come back to you on that. Because all the one time is primarily reserved. If you look up like line number 6, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, where it says one-time funds under lottery unrestricted. So that 1,621,000 is it reserved separately as one-time money. And then the two below that are coming from that. So it's like 1/8-ish that we have of unrestricted lottery. But I can get you a specific number tomorrow if you like.
Okay, with that.
Is the reserve funds, do they account for the new books that we got one-time thing?
I think that the easiest way for me to think about reserves is you get revenue in, you have expenses, and then you have contributions. So at the end of the year, if your revenue is more than expense and contribution, the leftover money goes into reserve. And it's kept by individual resource number, so where the money came from. We have to track it by each resource. If during the year your revenue less expense and contribution, you go negative, then that pulls from reserve. We have to designate which piece we're pulling it from, but that's basically how it works. And we had some years, where we were in the positive, and that's how these were built. And then depending on how the budget goes forward, we'll need to review that. Any questions? Okay, so page 8 is basically the same information we were just going over, but it's by the other fund. So we just got to talking about the general fund, which is Fund 01. Then on page 8, going left to right, you have Adult Ed, which is Fund 11. Right now, there's no revenue in the budget. PCC has made a verbal promise for revenue, but the last couple of years, we've had a hard time actually receiving the money. So I don't have anything in the budget, but I will put that there once the check comes through. It took us about 9 months to get the money last year. Then that shows where the salaries are being spent through Adult Ed. They'll be spending $339,000 more than they have of revenue at this time, but they still have a balance of $247,000. Fund 12 is ELP or quality care. These are our estimates of revenue for that group, and then what their expenses are, and then they'll have right now we're budgeting $159,000 in the positive. You'll notice that they're building up a nice reserve. We've had a little change in policy of what our pricing is and what our offerings are, and we're getting a lot more interest from folks to join the programs. The next one is the cafeteria plan, which is Plan 13, and that's all federal money. That's based on revenue from free and reduced lunch students or revenue from paying students, and then we have our expenses for the year, and we've got a really tight budget this year. As our raises go up and our expenses go up, the money that the federal government gives us per meal is really, really low. It's about $3 a meal, and we have to cover, all the expenses, the food, and paying everybody, so it's a pretty tight little budget. We're working on changing some of our practices to try and get a little better buffer in there. The very last one on this page is Fund 14, which is deferred maintenance. So 3% of the total expenses from Fund 1, you contribute it over to this Fund 14. So that's our estimate for this year and our budget for this year. You'll notice that the expenses are a bit higher than the revenue or the contribution is, and the reason is that we have carryover from last year that they'll be spending this year.
Can you elaborate on the 3% from the general fund? It's Fund 1, right?
Yes, so Fund 1, the state requirement is not optional for us. It was optional 3 or 4 years ago, but now it's required. You have to take 3% of your total expenses, restricted and unrestricted, and apply it to deferred maintenance. Page 9. So Fund 20 is where those OPEB contributions go. So you'll see $250,000, which will be transferred from Fund 1 to Fund 20 at the end of the year. And the $15,000 you see is our estimate of interest on those funds. And right now the balance is $2,086,673, and this is to offset the number that she shared with us earlier that's getting sort of the 60 million range. The next one is Bond Fund 21. And we don't have any revenue coming in at June 30th, because this is based on, at October. The money came in yesterday. So we will record that. It'll be Fund 21.2 for the bond. And then right now, we're expecting to have about $2 million left when Cloverly and La Rosa wrap up. The next one is developer fees. And these are fees, it's Fund 25. These are fees that anyone who does development in the city has to pay the district a certain percentage. This is money that's only available when you're growing. So with declining enrollment, it really narrows our options of how to spend it. One option would be, for instance, a kinder grant. There's a 25% match. These developer fees could be used to offset that match because it's increasing facilities and it will be increasing enrollment.
Mary, can you talk about the $4.3 million in capital outlay?
Mm-hmm.
Can you elaborate a little bit as to what that entails?
I'm sorry, Mike, what page are you on?
Page 9, slide 9. The $4.3 million in capital outlay.
Oh, that's the bond projects. So this is related to Cloverly and La Rosa this year. The Measure S bond, yes.
Particularly what capital outlay will cover?
So this is covering paint, technology, new windows, new flooring. What else is in there? New window blinds.
Do the architectural fees come into this?
They're not capital outlay. Those are professional services, and those were paid a couple of years ago.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. If they add any walls, furniture, things like that. Okay. Any questions?
Yes. On slide 5. Slide 6. Slide 6, we have the employees' benefits. So that row, would that cover the PERS and the STIRS?
So this includes STIRS and PERS, medical, and all the statutory taxes, like federal or state taxes that we pay on behalf of the employee.
And it covers the increase that the school district has to contribute towards STIRS and PERS, right?
Yes. And then there's another, the big data summary sheet that you all get. That will detail out for you year over year what the changes are in STIRS and PERS. It'll give you the total for the prior year, and then it will give you the increase to the next year.
All right, any other questions? Yeah, I'll entertain a motion for approval.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Member Smith, second by Member Lynn. Would our student board member like to vote on this?
I'll abstain.
Okay. For the rest of the board, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes 5-0-0. All right. Next is item 27, approve adjustments to 2019-20 district budget. Back to you, Mary Ann.
Give me just a second. Lost myself. I'm sorry. Helen, you have your copy with you, do you? Sorry. It's in the signature box. So as I mentioned to you, we were reviewing the first interim, we have an adjustment to LCFF for $7,400. The contribution for special ed has increased by $208,000 related to additional settlements that were not anticipated. We've got a little bit of an increase in our classified benefits that we had to adjust when we were reviewing the budget. And there's a small adjustment of $1,500 for indirect costs. And then there's a transfer for $469,000, an increase in the contribution for deferred maintenance as the other expenses have gone up. Because every time the total expenses go up, that 3% has to be recalculated. There's an adjustment for that.
Okay. Would someone like to make a motion and second?
Move to approve.
Okay, motion by member Smith. Second. Second by member Nolenberg. Okay, any questions or discussion? All right. Samuel, would you like to vote on this one?
Abstain.
Okay, thank you. So all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Move on to item 28, approval of full-day kindergarten facilities grant program.
Thank you, Madam President. So, as the slide that gets pulled up, just to give a bit of history on full-day kinder. Currently, Temple City Unified School District does not have a full-day kinder program. But Assembly Bill AB 197 was introduced in January 29 of 19, and it required school districts to offer at least one full-day kindergarten program by 22-23. We did do a presentation to the board in May reflecting of that Assembly Bill and having the discussion. It was noted at that meeting that we would take this school. Yes, Ken?
Did the state give us any money to support the full kindergarten subs?
No, they did not. So this was
So
just.
we're taking it out.
It was never in our budget. But
It didn't
this
pass
was-
either, right?
This was just potential legislature that was going through. So we did notify the board of that in May. It was decided that we would take this year to talk about full-day kindergarten and develop a plan for implementation pending the passing of the Assembly Bill.
Did the bill have any money in it?
The bill did not have any funds attached to it. So it was passed by the state legislature, but it was vetoed by Governor Newsom. And in the vetoing, he cited facility constraints. That was the issue that would cause significant distress to districts. So in September, that took place in the 2019 Budget Act. The State Budget Act also included a $300 million one-time non-Proposition 98 general fund for facilities improvement to expand full-day kindergarten. So this was a grant opportunity that was provided to school districts who do not have full-day kinder programs in an attempt to address the facility requirement that would come along with the passing of the legislature, the legislative bill. So what is full-day kindergarten? Full-day kindergarten as defined by the Assembly Bill is just a school day equaling the same number of minutes per school day as offered to pupils in first grade. So it would be an extension of our current half-day kindergarten program. The day would include ample opportunities for both activities that are instructionally based, but also have a physical component to them. So we would have to look at what our current programs are and then extrapolate up and amend that program for the full day implementation. Currently, 75% of school districts offer full day kindergarten programs, and 19 states have already mandated full day programs. In 1920, data report of TCUSD first grade cohorts indicate that approximately 50% of students who did not enroll in TCUSD kindergarten programs attended a full-day kindergarten program. And over the past 3 years, enrollment in first grade, when compared to the enrollment in kinder, the first grade enrollment shows an increase on average of about 53 students. So for the same cohort being in kindergarten and then progressing to first grade, we're seeing a trend of an average of 53 students entering into our first grade program as opposed to the prior year's kinder program. The amount of students attending TCUSD on permit has increased by nearly 5% for kindergarten. So we tried to pull some data with regard to the enrollment trends that we were seeing. Ken?
Yes. When you talk about the kindergarten, is there, if a parent has a child that's eligible for the kindergarten or the pre-kindergarten, is there a cost savings to the parent for enrolling the kid in the kindergarten class versus enrolling him in quality care or whatever term we want to use? Do you follow?
Well,
I mean, how do we keep people from taking advantage of a system and putting them into kindergarten if it saves them money?
well, I think the decision for parents is really enrolling in either a part-time kindergarten or a full-time kindergarten. So for families who both the mother, father, or the family, the unit, both of those individuals or whomever is in charge of those children work, then there could be an advantage of the child enrolling in a full-day kindergarten program, which you could extrapolate that would ease childcare costs that would be normally associated with a part-time program. Does that answer your question? And just looking across the district at some enrollment data, I know that Dr. Porter had already touched on that in the data presentation earlier this evening, but overall the district has an enrollment decline over the past 5 years of about 371 students. Elementary, we broke that apart by elementary and secondary levels, and you can see a decline in about 239 students over the past 5 years, and then the secondary has a decline of about 132 students over the same 5-year period of time.
Does the bubble keep going forward? When we have lost students, is there a hole created in the next group? Middle school and high school?
So that trend, as the decline happens, that trend does matriculate through to subsequent grades, yes. So the full day kinder facility grant, as I mentioned prior, was implemented as a $300 million program, offering a grant that only districts that do not have full day kindergarten programs could apply for. The state provides eligible districts with about 75% of the costs, and the district would cover the remainder of the 25% of cost. As Marianne presented in her presentation just before, we would look at the developer fees, which is a restricted reserve fund that we cannot access unless you are showing growth or expansion of program or student. And this would be an area where we could use those developer fees for, I would believe, a good cause. If we don't use them, legally we would have to, over a period of time, issue those back to the developer. So they are captured for the school district's use, and if we aren't using them, don't use them over a given period of time, we have to give those funds back.
A question just about the fund, about the grant. Does the grant lock the district into full day kinder with no ability to offer part-time kinder at any one site?
So the grant covers, it's a per classroom grant, and it's the per classroom for full day kinder program. So it would be really up to the board to determine to the extent that we would apply for the grant, meaning we would determine the number of classrooms we would be applying for.
What school?
So if we don't use
yes, we would indicate what school, but more importantly, how many classrooms.
So whatever classrooms we build, they have to be full day kinder, but it doesn't necessarily impact the classrooms that already exist that are not touched by this grant money.
So any authorization of the grant money would be for the implementation of a full day program within that classroom, yes. Currently, Temple City Unified School District does meet the qualifications necessary to apply for the grant. Some of the benefits of the program, we want to look at targeted or focused instructional components for the earlier level learners. We do know that there is a lot of federal and state and even county-led information programs and attention paid to early level learners, and making sure that early childhood learning is a central focus for district leadership. It also allows for enhancement of reading skills in the TK 1-2 levels, and much of the research shows, and I've cited some in the back of the presentation, that being students who are on grade level by grade 3 tend to maintain higher achievement and tend to maintain on grade level throughout their academic career. Students who aren't at that level, on grade level by grade 3, you tend not to be able to provide intervention or remediation in a way, sorry, excuse me, I'm sitting on my phone. You tend not to be able to provide enough remediation or intervention in later grades to actually close the gap and catch them back up. So we do know that early reading and reading on grade level is an essential component and goal of ours. It also provides ample opportunity for that focus on ELA, English Language Arts Development, and also for our English language learners. It would provide an extended time for those younger students, if they are English language learners, to be able to develop that language acquisition skill. And in addition to additional amount of time apportioned to math or science programs. And of course, it would be with our highly qualified teachers, which would provide the best educational components necessary for students to learn and develop at those younger grade levels.
Another question, have we kind of estimated what the expenses would be associated with full-time kinder that are going to be out of our budget? Because this only covers buildings, doesn't cover staffing or anything like that. So what's the estimate with regard to how much that would impact our budget?
So we have not cost out, and you'll see in a later slide, we actually have this as one of our next steps to cost out what the full day kindergarten would be with the grant, should we be awarded a grant, then what would be the district's contribution obligation, where would that come from? Because you would want to know the funding source along with that. And then the other one is, should the state adopt and go forward and approve the requirement for full day kinder, and we did not apply for the grant, then what would be the district's obligation in that scenario too? So both of those scenarios we would want to cost out for you. Currently, in our kinder programs, the ROSAS program is an extended day, and you have one teacher per one kinder classroom. In the other schools, Longden and Emperor, you have half-day kinder programs, and you have 2 teachers assigned, so they actually work in conjunction with each other to provide the academic instruction throughout the majority of that day. So in those 2 schools, you'd be separating 2 teachers in one classroom into 2 teachers in 2 classrooms. So, but we would break out the costs for either classified support, certificated support, and other ancillary costs that would be associated with the kinder program in either of those 2 scenarios that I previously mentioned. Does that answer your question?
Well, and also, if we're going to vote, if we don't go forward with allowing you to apply for the grant, then there's a problem. There may be a problem, right? But if we approve it, doesn't mean we're locked into doing it, right?
So I do break out the next steps. You're correct in that tonight on the table would be the approval of approving us to apply for the grant. And then we would continue the conversations with staff, with union leadership, and try to develop a plan if it was a move forward decision to implement a full day kinder. We want to make sure that we can address the staff's needs, and we want to make sure that we address their concerns and also have fiscal responsibility should we move forward. But all of that would need to have further discussion and then come back to the board for later approval.
Anytime there's money out there like this, I feel like we would be remiss if we don't apply. But at the same time, if we do get the money, what are the criteria? Are we bounded by, let's say, a grant award in this case to construct, if we were to be awarded a grant?
So if you apply for a grant and even if you're awarded the grant, you don't have to receive the grant. You could reject the grant should the board at that time decide to reject the grant. Once the grant opportunity passes, and with this grant, there were waves of eligibility. We happen to fall in this current offering of eligibility. And then, again, it only applies to the districts who do not offer full-day kinder program. And then it went by a priority structure. So there will be another wave probably coming after this, but we will not apply. We would not qualify for that component. It goes by districts and the certain criteria of each phase for which districts can apply for which phase.
So this item on the agenda is basically to ask the board's approval to expand options that we may have. We could decide later, but it's to expand those options.
You can always, the board would have to approve to receive the grant, or you would approve to reject the grant, once we have written notification if we even got the grant.
Okay.
And there's no guarantee that we would get the grant.
Okay. Thank you.
And then the review of literature, again, it just really speaks to early childhood learning, especially in the areas of reading and how significant it is for our readers to be on par by that grade level 3. So it really makes the TKK1-2 a very, very essential component, not only for the elementary schools, but those teachers in those classrooms really set the trajectory for those students that matriculate all the way through our K-12 system. We did pull some reading, some literature on remedial support or interventions past that grade level 3, and it's very difficult to replace initial first best instruction and to try to have a remediation program or an intervention program that catches kids up if they are off track.
But have we identified current issues with our reading program and how we deliver, the program with the part-time? Is there problems with it? Because I didn't get that sense when I sat in the meeting that I sat in. I understood it to be a fine program, but this is just about offering more options.
So I don't know that we've ever did any data extrapolation for Tcusd to understand if our students, as they matriculated up, if there was a significant problem all the way that generated back to their kinder program and it being a half day. That would be a hard thing to prove and attribute it back to that kinder program. However, we would have to look at the literature to see where it is where we would want to have the greatest amount of emphasis in building the strongest programs that we possibly can. And when we review the literature, it all circulates around this early education, especially in your preschool, your TK, your K1-2 levels. And that is why you're having so much targeted attention from the state level and definitely the local level. Deborah Eduardo, who's a superintendent of LA County, her emphasis is on early childhood learning. And when we went to the superintendent symposium, it was back in October, that was one of her key emphases and key goals is for districts to look at their pre-K, TK, K1, especially the transitions as students matriculate through that early childhood education and making sure that they have the strongest programs possible.
Okay, and we could compare though, or we could look at the data from kinder to first grade, because first grade is full-time, and whether or not there's struggling and what the numbers look like for that group. But are they tested? No, they don't, right? Yeah, that's what I remember. Okay.
So we don't know until grade 3.
So I see. Yeah. Okay.
So the question is, say the other surrounding school districts apply and qualify for this and they start building classrooms and they go full day, what would we anticipate in terms of an impact to us if we remain half day and we didn't apply for a grant, we don't qualify?
It's hard to project what would happen. I do know that some of our families, especially when they're looking at coming into the district or petitioning into the district, they do ask us if we do have a full day kinder program, or they look on our website to see if we have a full day kinder program. The only data that we could find to talk to the enrollment number is just tracking that cohort data from our kinders to our first grade over the past 3 years to see where that trend would be. And over that, there is an average of 53 students who do not select for whatever reason, and we don't know what that reason was. You can project that it was for a full day program. But we are 53 students on average less in our kinder program, and they come back for our first grade program. So those families either petitioning in, or those families who are Temple City Unified School District families, you see a higher enrollment number in our first grade. So if you're asking me to project, I would probably project that trend. Most of the surrounding districts do offer full day kinder programs, and we would want our Temple City students to stay in Temple City and select our kinder programs as well. We're not going to do that outside of guidance from our union leadership, and then obviously working with our teaching staff because they're the ones who have to put it into practice. So we want to make sure that we capture their concerns, and when we build a plan moving forward, that we mitigate those concerns to the greatest extent possible.
Is there a deadline to this application?
There's what?
Is there a deadline to this?
So our deadline for this application is the first quarter of the year. So we would need to have approval to submit the grant by January, so we have enough time to finish the grant application and then submit it by the due date. Moving on, I think that just areas of focus, I think that we've talked a lot about this already. We do want to make sure we have long-term student academic success. Understand the program development typically takes about 2 to 3 years for implementation anyway, so this is not a short endeavor. It's something that is a significant change for the district, and it would take time to put in with fidelity, so we want to be mindful of that. And then the structure of the overall program is paramount to its success, so we want to make sure that when or if this program moves forward, that we do it with the highest degree possible, and that we make sure that we overcome any challenges related to the children and having a shorter attention span, or struggling to meet the full day requirement. We want to make sure that it's not a child care versus learning program, that it is an academic program, and that it is really doing what we appeared to do, designed it to do. And then we will continue to monitor as we go along if we do implement the program. Elementary teacher concerns. Obviously, there is an extended day, there's an extended portion, so supervision becomes one thing that we would want to mitigate. Class size is something that we just haven't discussed, but we would need to have that as a conversation with union leadership and teachers. We do think that our qualified teachers would be the best teachers in front of those students, and we've talked about having aid support, not having aid support for those teachers for the full day. We do need some training for smaller group instruction and rotations, just to help our staff, and then preparation time for teachers. Obviously, they're doing lessons for an extended day, so we would want to make sure that that's built into the planning. Classroom space, playground space, lunch, snack, shelters, any traffic impact, those are things that we're looking at. More curricular versus extracurricular, social emotional impact, and then just the structure of the school day. So those would be the concerns that we would want to. Some are facility concerns, some are instructional concerns, and then some are just programmatic concerns that we would want to mitigate as we go forward. And then finally, 1920 full day kinder focus. So working with staff and union leadership, like I said prior, applying for a grant would help us secure funds should we move forward. Otherwise, that fund, all of those funds would be coming directly from our Fund 1 or our general fund, should that legislation be passed and signed by the governor. And then we would want to take proactive steps to prepare for the impending legislation. Now that there is money associated to it, it kind of gives some legitimacy to that bill moving forward at a later date. If we can secure that fund from the state, that would be a significant advantage. If we can't, then we would have to find a different way. It could revert some of the decline in enrollment, which that would be our hope, that it would draw those students back and have them stay in our kinder programs. And then the grant application, you can see it outlined here, which is what the question was before. And the first step is just approving approval of the full-day kinder grant application. And then we would continue those conversations with union and staff leadership. Should we then put a resolution forward to move forward with a full-day kinder program for at least one site, then that would again qualify us to take the grant funds and the grant money. But we have a lot of work to do from this time until then, but we are committed to doing that. Next steps moving forward, we would prepare, if you look down the sheet there, because we talked about some of those items prior, but definitely looking at the January presentation or even February presentation to provide you with some budget information for full-day kinder, what the impacts would be in a 3-year budget analysis with grant funds versus without. So we would have to take some time to look at all of those program components and continue to, cost out those components and then provide you with that information. We do not have that for you this evening. Then the final bullet point would be understanding what the implications would be if we do not apply for the grant and the legislature goes ahead and approves the assembly bill. So that concludes the presentation. There's just supporting literature if anyone wants. So that's just currently where we are now.
Thank you. Yes, Ken?
Does the grant money it has no restrictions on it? Can be used for salary and facilities?
No, it would be restricted to facilities and costs associated with the facility. So it could be infrastructure and technology inside of classrooms, furniture.
So can we build a new classroom?
Yes, we could.
Ellen, you wanted to ask a question?
I did, I just kind of wanted to clarify that when we build one classroom for full-day kinder, that is not the only classroom that will house full-day kinder. All the other classrooms at that school site would also go full-day kinder.
So I believe that Ms. Espinoza was asking me if we agreed to have it for one classroom, do we have to extrapolate that to every classroom? And the answer is, no, you don't. But whatever funds you take, that would be the classroom that would have to go full-day kinder.
And then I just think of the equity to all students.
Right.
That there would be an issue. And also that if one school site went full-day, the other school sites and the parents and the community and the students equitably all would probably want the same.
Sure, and so I was trying to answer the question that she asked, just with regards to funds. We would have to discuss, obviously, as union leadership and district leadership, and then with staff, to determine what would be the best and appropriate plan moving forward. Should it be all? Should it be some? We would have to talk through all of those points. So, yeah.
And then I went to 3 meetings, I think it was November 18th, November 20th, maybe November 19th, I'm not sure. And at every meeting, I felt I heard that the grant had been submitted and that the first closing of the grant was January 2019 and the second closing of the grant was May 2019. So my feeling is that the grant has already been submitted.
It has not.
Thank you.
It's 2020.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So it closes the end of March of 19. It has to be submitted by then.
By March of 19 has passed.
March 20, sorry. It's late. So this coming March, but nothing has been submitted. We're asking the board for approval to go forward with it tonight, and depending on their decision, then we'll either start the work of gathering information or not.
And it has been written.
The grant?
No.
Not anything has been done yet.
So we have to, we will submit.
I have a problem because I did go to 3 of those meetings and at every meeting the grant had been written. And so that's where I have a bit of a problem.
I'll be the one doing most of the writing, unfortunately. So I'm telling you, not a stitch has been done yet. It's a lot of work, so we want to make sure the board's approving it before we move forward on that.
If I could just interject, I think I had heard that there was a first band that has already happened, but we didn't qualify for the first band, so other districts might have, but not us.
Yeah, there were 5 waves of funding. The first 2 we didn't qualify for because they were only for districts of high need, but very few of them actually stepped forward and applied. So there's this glut of money, and so they're expanding, we can apply and we fall in for this one, but they've already told us we will not qualify for 4 or 5.
I guess it's the verb. I heard I have written a grant as opposed to I will be writing a grant.
I have not written
I
it.
apologize.
No worries.
No, we've not written it. We would get approval to write it and submit the application for it, and then we would move forward.
Okay. All right, someone like to make a motion?
Move to approve.
Okay, motion by member Smith,
Second.
second by member Nolenberg. Okay, our student board member. Well, let me ask first, any more questions or discussion? Okay, Samuel?
Yes.
Samuel votes yes on that. Okay, the rest of the board, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, it passes 4-0-1. All right, 5. I'm sorry, 5. It's getting late, it's getting late. Okay, moving on to item number 29, approval of purchase of additional technology for TCHS.
Thank you. Just a quick overview of this as well. Basically, this the technology that we're looking for is to support looking at the data that we showed you earlier today. The ability to take that assessment that records our student data does require a specific device that is eligible or meets the qualifications of the state to host the software or the online profile. Looking at our different, like back in the spring of 2019, English learners, they are also now taking the assessment, the LPAC, which is also an online assessment, online assessment calculated by the state. And then in addition to that, we're seeing a big shift in technology and instruction and learning has created kind of a need for schools to ensure appropriate devices are provided for students. Currently, our middle and high school levels have enough devices for testing this year. The high school, however, only has enough for about half of the current 11th grade class, and so they're the lowest one. This was done on a hand count. We verified them all by what we had on our records, and then we sent our teams back out to count again as well. Just due to the lack of available devices at the high school, it's recommended to purchase 6 carts of 36, each for a total of 216 laptops. That would bring the 11th grade class to a 1-to-1 ratio for the testing season, which would allow us a lot more greater flexibility for them to test and schedule the staff. It does not bring the school up to a top ratio, but it does get them to about a 5-to-1, which would significantly improve their use of technology throughout the year as well. They would be sitting just for testing. We're also looking at, due to the level and the time, we found that as you start looking at technology upgrades and you look at Chromebooks at the secondary level, they have a shorter lifespan. Google cuts them off by their operating system upgrades, whereas laptops do not. So you're able to, on average, get about 2 years longer out of each device when you use a laptop, and it's just a little bit more cost on top of that. So we're just, staff recommending that we make this purchase in order to support testing and support technology in our high school students.
Would someone like to make a motion?
I'll motion.
Motion by member Espinoza and second by member Nolenberg. Any questions or comments before we, all right, would our student board member like to vote? Okay, and for the rest of the board, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, it passes 5-0-1. All right, item 30. Approve administration of California Healthy Kids Survey.
Again, as part of the data that we presented today, part of our LCAP, the data we use to develop our goals is social emotional health and well-being of our students. Currently, right now, we don't have an assessment that evaluates a lot of our student needs and what they're going through. The California Healthy Kids Survey, it's an anonymous survey managed and distributed by, I'll go through the whole thing, the Healthy Kids Learning System. It's created by the California Department of Education back in 1997 to effectively and cost-effectively provide school districts and their partner communities with quality local data that can be used to improve student academic performance and social-emotional behavior, physical health of all youth. Basically, it's an anonymous survey that goes out. It will evaluate not just the students, but staff, parents, community, provides feedback that can come back that we use to evaluate as part of our LCAP goals. In addition to needing the data for the LCAP, it'll provide campus reports with the California Healthy Kids offers other benefit. So that's another benefit. It'll also provide data for our wellness team to develop a uniform wellness plan for Tcusd, and the data will inform and support their efforts as we evaluate the revise of the plan each year. So.
Okay, someone like to make a motion?
I would like to make the motion.
I'll second.
Motion by member Lynn, second by member Espinosa. Any comments or questions?
We also have the staff survey and the parent survey.
Yeah, the community, staff, I apologize, I was at school, but yes, it would be staff, community, and students, along with it. And I do apologize, I did not, there's a financial implication with this of $4,000.
So we're gonna use this data. There's also another package, which is the staff survey as well. Do we already have that purchased? Was this one?
No, we do not, no.
That's also really useful for LCAP purposes.
I did, with our LCAP survey, basically we'll take our LCAP survey and we will combine the Healthy Kids staff and parent portion into that. I mean, we can't exactly use it word for word, but we're using those questions on safety and everything, and we're gonna put those into our LCAP, as well as with our Title I questions and our goal priority questions. So you will see questions that reflect the same questions that you see in those surveys.
So the staff survey and the parent surveys are developed in-house?
Yes.
What I was talking about is this company also sells the other two surveys.
Yes, which we have access to, and we're just trying to build our own, because to double survey, our numbers will go down. So just to maximize, the input from parents so they're not hit twice with the survey, to try to figure out a way to combine them. We will bring that to you though in January, the survey, so you could take a look at it and have input on it before we deploy it.
Any other questions? Tammy, would you like to vote on this? Okay, Tammy will vote yes. The rest of the board, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, passes 5-0-1. All right, moving on to the consent calendar. Motion.
Move to approve.
Motion by member Smith and second by member Lynn. All in favor, signify. Oh, I'm sorry.
I had received a call today about two of the items under the contract section involving a batting cage at Temple City High School, as to whether that was for baseball or softball. I just want to clarify it is for softball. It's for girls, so something that was destroyed when the remodel into place.
Okay, great. Thank you for that.
I did have a question as well on the contract. There was a contract listed for a San Marino security. I think it was San Marino Security Company. Was that an RFP? Like, did we go through an RFP to secure that service?
So San Marino Security has been our service provider for quite some time.
Oh, it's
We're actually finalizing our contract with them, and we brought a contract with Bay Alarm to the to the board a few months ago to approve. They've almost completed their process and will be fully converted very shortly.
Okay, all right. I just saw a 2019 year on there, and that's why I thought it was new.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, it passes 5-0. Board requests or comments? Does anybody have any? Yes, Ken.
Yes, I'd like to see us be able to charge for the parking lot.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Because the parking lot,
Oh, charge for the parking lot?
since we resurfaced it and everything, we spent a lot of money on taking and doing maintenance on the parking lot, and people are taking advantage of it by parking overnight and not parking on the streets like they should, or get the city charges for parking on their streets, we should charge for, or put a chain up or something, and whatever the cost.
Okay, will that be included in the facility use fee study?
I will include that.
Okay, all right, we'll include that and then we can discuss it later. Okay, anything else? I did have two quick things, things that have been on our list that we haven't gotten around to do it, and I did attend sessions on them at CSBA. The first one is the board self-evaluation, And what I'd like to propose to get us going on this is CSBA has a self-evaluation that for $200, they'll send it out to all of us. We fill it out, they'll compile the results, and then I'm proposing that we schedule a evening meeting sometime in January, because it has to be done in open session, and we can evaluate ourselves. So if maybe Kim can look into that for us. The other thing is the superintendent's evaluation. We've just not had time to do it, so I'm proposing either we change the start of one of our closed sessions to either 5 or 4:30 so that we can have time to evaluate her, or do something on a Saturday. So maybe Kim, you guys can.
She had proposed January 11th as
Well,
a special meeting.
Why don't you survey all the board members and find a day or a time, but let's get moving on it, okay? All right, so those were the two things I had. Is there any additional public comments?
Great job.
Okay, if not, we'll move to adjourn at 9:59. Can we get a second, motion, Mike, a second?
Second.
Okay, and all in favor? Okay, before you leave, Jerry wants to take a picture. So,